Hello everyone, and welcome back to Fleet's Catch-Up Ramblings. Once again, we're here going through the questions that we didn't quite have a chance to get to on Monday. Joining me is Ruinon and Foxo, as always, on a Friday, and we never know who else we might get. Hello everyone, and welcome back
Whoops,
to
and I am
Fleet's
about to
Catch-Up
deafen myself because I accidentally left my own stream unmuted, but hey ho, whoops-a-daisy, it's fine.
Hey, let's go.
Okay, so without further ado, let's just get right. Let's just get right into it. Typical gunner officer.
That's what he said.
Opinions on the CF-100. Do you think it's the best early 1950s jet interceptor, better than the F-94, Javelin, and Yak-25?
What aircraft?
The F-100 Canuck. Not really. No.
Isn't that Canadian?
Yes. Look, it's a solid platform, and it did what the Canadians needed it to do. But best interceptor of the early jet period? No. Not at all. It's let down by its somewhat antiquated design. It's reliable, to be sure, and a solid platform, but the best interceptor of the period in which it serves? No. No.
I mean, given how many it's made to flight in 1950, it was an incredibly good interceptor for its time.
Not when you compare it to some of the contemporaries that come in very, very, very rapidly after it appears. But I will agree, for that very brief window where it's top of the podium, yes, it is a standout aircraft. But its place in the sun is limited. Like as I said though, it's a solid, dependable, capable design. But best in class? No, I don't think
Best
so.
in class. I'm just checking. It's transonic in in 1950.
Yeah.
Until you get stuff like the Lightnings and the 15s, it's best in class.
No.
Because most interceptors aren't transonic.
No, that's...
Because if I remember correctly, is it the Mark 4, the fourth prototype did Mach 1.1 reliably?
Yeah, one thing that does need to be remembered when you're looking at the key word here is not fighter, not escort. It is interceptor.
I know. I am.
Which means it's got to rocket off and be really quick to do its job.
I am aware of that. Thank you for reminding me of definitions of words in the English language. I do know them. And
yes, but what I'm saying is, if you have an aircraft which is transonic in a period where other aircraft in that role are subsonic, that aircraft immediately has an advantage.
I mean,
for the role.
First of all, I don't know where Foxo's got this information. From what I can see, CF-100 is not transonic.
Apparently, in a shallow dive, it could break the sound barrier at Mach 1.1.
In a dive. In a controlled dive.
Yeah. Which is still a lot better than other aircraft of the time.
Yes, but an interceptor is not going to be diving to reach its intercept point. It's not going to take off and then dive into the ground to reach the point where the bombers are, is it?
No,
depends on who you're trying to attack.
Aircraft, Foxo, tend to have to go up to reach other aircraft.
But attack altitudes for interceptors are designed above the bombers they're intercepting.
I am aware of that. However, one of the key I'm not so much answering your point as Ruinon's at this point, because one of the key contentions he was making that
She.
if sorry, my brain is fuzzled today. Sorry, I've had a week. Apologies. One of the key contentions she was making was that, you know, if it could fly transonic speeds to its intercept point, that would make it better than a lot of the other aircraft in the role. And she is correct. The problem is, like I've said, the CF-100 is not capable of doing that.
There are
Go on.
there are encounters, to use the term broadly, where the interceptor can have a hot altitude advantage over its target.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Especially if this was a theater or, I guess, tactical quote level interceptor, and not like a anti-strategic bomber interceptor. While only being able to achieve controllable transonic in a dive does detriment from its ability to achieve transonic at all relative to its peers, that it's still not eliminated, because there are sorties that you will fly that will see you climb to an altitude and then dive on your targets.
Oh no, I'm not denying that it's a bit that the ability to do those transonic and honestly supersonic dives, if probably under war conditions, if it can do it under testing, are an exceptionally valuable addition to its arsenal. And again, it returns back to the point that I'm saying again. No one here is arguing the CF-100 is ineffective. Like I say, dependable, reliable, useful, well-armed, decent range, decent endurance.
Which is why I said it would have been one of the best in class.
I disagree when
Because
you look...
for its job, it's a very good aircraft. And when it comes out, the Hawker Hunter's not come out yet. You're looking at the late 40s interceptors, which is where it still beats out a lot of them. It only really, a lot of the interceptors at this point, if you're in the bracket that this thing is, are much of the same. So
I suppose there is
and
that.
This thing's better than most.
Mm.
And it just, like all of these interceptors, is killed off by the super cruising interceptor.
I don't like to call things best in class unless it's a completely clear advantage, and this isn't nearly clear enough for me to make that call.
Fair.
Like, for example, I could sit here and quite comfortably say that the F-22 is one of the best aircraft in the world.
It's best in class, because it's the only aircraft in its class, so that's a bad example.
J-20 sat there with its arms folded.
No.
It is best in class, as in the F-22, but J-20 is a 5th generation fighter. We can't ignore that anymore. It is a proper 5th generation fighter at this point. And it's approaching equivalence with... Admittedly, it's approaching equivalence with a platform 20 years its senior, but still, the fact is, it is approaching equivalence now. In terms of...
Fair enough. Like
1931 asks, so, if something made the 4 Scandinavian nations unite after 1908, who would be king? Nobody. There would be no royal family that would supersede the others. If the Scandinavian nations unified, it would be under some form of federal system, most likely. Ideally to retain some level of basic sovereignty for each of the royal houses, since they all at that point have a history of one house ruling over the others at various points throughout Scandinavia's history, and any political union between the 4 nations would have to basically not have that be a thing, unless the unification happens by force. And
it's not even that. I would also point out it's going to depend on how dominant are the Swedes in this relationship.
Yeah, there is that as well. But I would also point out that there is also...
if Sweden is the dominant power and the will is there from the populace for the unitary state, German unification style.
Hmm.
The Swedish government's going to be the one eating the other Nordic powers,
Yeah,
and so the Swedish monarchy wins by default.
Timu has noticed the elephant in the room here. Finland. That's what I think is being called the fourth Scandinavian nation. And in 1908, there's a problem.
It wouldn't be Finland.
There's no other nation in
It'd
1908.
be Iceland.
Iceland doesn't exist in 1908.
Iceland does.
It's not an independent state.
It's a fully autonomous protectorate, and it has its own international diplomacy.
That's not an independent state. It still technically swears fealty to the government in Copenhagen. Therefore,
I think the best way to address this question is insufficient information to pursue the hypothetical.
indeed, I think that's probably we don't know the circumstances of the
because-
unification. You didn't state which four nations.
Yeah, you haven't clarified which four nations. We can make assumptions, but depending upon which assumptions we make are going to generate different answers. Additionally,
The how
again,
matters.
the how? What is the language of the legal documents that are going to establish a unitary Scandinavian state?
Because that is going to massively
Because
vary.
Yeah, that's going to have a huge impact, because you could have it where, all right, we're going to take, if you've got the top two royal families in Scandinavia, okay, you two get married, the two offspring of the appropriate presentation, get married, and you're going to start the new royal line.
Yeah, there's so many different variations. Yeah, it's just.
Yeah.
To be fair, also good luck trying.
Yeah. YouTube Minecraft Watcher asks,
You
what if
need
Yeah.
because it would have to be under a singular dominant power eating the others.
Yeah.
And
that's gonna
pretty
depend
much
on-
most of them don't like the idea, because that was basically the case for
A
a
long
good
time.
portion. Yeah.
I mean,
First
just-
Denmark.
just-
Yeah, first Denmark had a go at being the dominant power, then Sweden had a go. Poor old Norway never got the chance to have a go and was passed
Norway
back in-
did.
No, they didn't.
Norway did.
Yeah, quote unquote.
Scandinavian history goes, Norway's the dominant one, Denmark's the dominant one, the Swedes are dominant.
Not the modern iterations of those states as we know them as Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. I'm aware that the area we now know of as Norway was the dominant part of Scandinavia for a decent chunk of its history. Let me clarify, I am referring to the polities by the time they form up into the nations we know them as now. I'm aware they didn't quite have all the lands we have now. In fact, some of them had more lands then than they had now. But by about the 1400s, you do have the coalescence of the polities we know as Denmark, Sweden, and Norway.
By 1400s we don't, because Norway is ceasing to exist, being beaten by Denmark. But the Danish monarchy and the Norwegian crown and Norwegian monarchy claim legitimacy from Harald Fair. No, it's not Harald. Fucking Fairhair, first king of Norway, who wasn't even Christian.
Right. I feel like we've
Anyway,
Yeah. YouTube Minecraft Watcher. What if Major General Hobart appeared today? What would he get up to?
It was Harold.
So the
he's going to be really excited about microelectronics.
yeah, but I will.
Yeah.
On the one hand, I understand why people ask questions like these, but on the other hand, I'm going to use this question to give an example, to air something that's been rattling around my head for a while in regards to questions like these. They do have a fundamental... I know what they want out of me, but my brain just cannot connect to the scenario when you come to individual people. Even through historical record and memoirs, we can get a good measure of a man or a woman. or those in between those two particular extremes, as it may be.
Otherwise known as people
Yes,
or persons.
indeed. But you can never know how someone's going to act in a situation until you put them in that situation. Not really. And
Queen.
and politely, whilst I don't mind these questions being asked, I never feel confident answering them. It's one of the reasons why I just generally don't and let the panel answer, because I never feel confident speculating on the personal motivations and personal actions of any one person, especially put into a singularly extraordinary circumstance, aka returning from death long after you have died, with no explanation for how you've come back.
But for most people, historical people, coming back to modern day would be the same fucking answer of Nanny the fuck.
Yes, but
I mean,
these
types of
Go on.
these types of questions are definitely ones where specific beats general every day of the week, twice on Sundays.
Could you expand on that? That TLDR doesn't quite... I don't understand. Can I get a brief explanation?
Specific beats general is a concept in tabletop gaming where if you have a specific rule which contradicts a general rule, the specific rule wins. So in this case, if you say, what would General Hobart do if he was put in charge of the British Army's Technical Research Division? What would he focus on of the modern projects that are available? That's a very specific question. That one is far easier to give a articulate answer to. Whereas, what if this person exists today is kind of a, like you're saying,
Thank you,
they
Rowan.
could go a bunch of different ways.
Thank you, Rowan. It's a great way to describe it. Douglas Yotai, I think that's Yotai? Yoti? Yoiti?
Jotun.
Yoti.
Douglas Yoti asks, since 1879, the Paris Commune has managed to capture the leaders of the national government and the French army. With a socialist France now existing, how will that affect Europe and the world? It exists for all of 5 seconds until the German army, still encamped on French soil, crushes it utterly. And that's not hyperbole, that's not speculation. That's what the Germans were literally saying they were going to do. They made it clear. And they sent it loud around the various parliaments and governments of Europe. They said, if this whole business with the Paris Commune spreads, and the French government doesn't put it down, the German army will. Sorry, at that point, still technically the Prussian army, or the army of the North German Confederation. But still. And the proper French army, led by France proper, couldn't beat the Prussian army. What bloody chance does a bunch of red rabble with basically no experience leading the battered remnants of that army possibly have?
You'd be able to turn it into a war of resistance.
I it's not even... This government will be exceptionally unpopular across France. The Paris Commune was not a popular thing across France. It was a unique product of Paris. This government would be as unpopular with the rest of France as the German occupation is. They can't really turn it into a war of resistance.
The cannon, in the case of Paris,
then Paris gets leveled. And we see a similar pacification campaign as the one the French government had to do historically, just executed by the Germans instead. And
I won't say that.
What do you mean?
Because France could hide behind its own internal business.
That
powers of this time period were very, shall we say, looked down upon you leveling cities.
There's a difference between leveling a city out of nothing and quite literally, like, the Germans had made it... Well, first of all, the Germans have already shelled Paris already. And
yes,
the backlash was
there's a difference between taking a city and doing the sort of rooting out you need for this sort of thing.
I don't think there's going to be as much outrage as you think there is. because the legitimate government of France has been toppled and
Yeah.
replaced by something that is antithetical to basically every government in Europe and the world at that point. A
No,
regime,
let's not.
a regime that none of them will want to deal with and none of them will want to legitimize.
Yeah.
No, let's not kid
No.
ourselves. In order for the French, like the Paris Commune, to take over, Paris has already been leveled by the civil war between the two.
True.
Yeah.
There
And
wouldn't be much left when you consider just the historical situation that occurred, where a good portion of Paris it was basically a civil war, just inside Paris. If you think there's going to be much of a city left, if that actually escalated to the point where the Paris Commune won,
Yeah,
there wasn't much of a city left.
But the Germans are going to make some bluster about it and then not do it.
no, the Germans.
Because there's one thing the European powers do not want to renormalize from the previous wars in Europe, and that is going in and raising your opponent's cities.
Well,
Okay.
Fox, so you're yeah.
Hang on. There's a key distinction here that I'm missing, which may clean it up. Foxo? Okay. Are we talking about MOUT, military operations in urban terrain, or are we talking about I am leveling the city with the sole intent of leveling it?
No, I'm
The
talking.
latter.
Yeah, when I say level the city, I'm more referring to the scale of explosives and the level of military operations we're talking about to root out an insurgency on this scale in a city like Paris. The Germans aren't going in to level the city for the sake of it.
But you're
So
attacking the civilian population.
Foxo. Crying out loud, give me a second. So Fleet's talking about MOUT. Fox, are you also talking about MOUT, or are you talking about something else?
I'm talking. I would be talking about same thing as him. But my point is that you're going to be attacking the civilians and the local population of the city. At that point, you can dress up in fancy words, but you start essentially shelling and massacring of the local population because they're a part of this insurgency. You're functionally raising the city, and the European powers of the time won't accept that.
They would if it was well. This would be a situation unprecedented, so I don't think that.
No, not really.
I don't think the.
They used to do it to Paris in the Napoleonic Wars.
Yes, but Paris wasn't occupied by a government that has just slaughtered the new legitimate government of France and is now preaching the overthrow of every single established order on the continent. Once they're not bloody quiet about it. Once France is ours, we'll spread the revolution. Like, it's all over the Paris Commune's pamphlets. It is one thing. Like, it would be one thing for the great powers to basically stand by as the Prussian army goes in to do this against the government of national resistance or the new Republican government, if the Republican government hasn't stepped in to stomp out the Paris Commune. It's entirely another for the Prussians to go, look, we negotiated with a government to end the conflict. That government has been destroyed. France, as long as this commune remains in control of Paris, the last remnants of this government, which will probably, quite frankly, now be sheltering with the Prussians, with what little of the forces they can retain to themselves, because quite frankly, the only chance of regaining control of Paris is to use the only extant military force with the potential to regain control of Paris by force, that being the Prussian army encamped in France. And they'll basically go, this is going to be bloody, this is going to be hell, but if the great powers of Europe do not want a expansionary... Basically, if they don't want to return to the days of the 1790s, with a France that is dedicated to exporting revolutionary ideals, now of a far more toxic nature than the ones they exported in the 1790s, to every nation it can sink its teeth into, your only option is to let us rip and tear until it's done. And then we will restore the national government as the government that we made peace with before it was couped by the Commune, and we will return to the peace agreement that we signed with that government.
What is your source about that they are expansionists?
It was all over the Paris Commune's propaganda. They wanted to secure Paris, then France, and then export the
Yeah,
ideals.
but
of
it's also noted that most literature about the Paris Commune does come from the Prussians. And for some reason, I think the Prussians may be a bit biased about this sort of thing.
I'm genuinely just looking through this, and I'm like, I don't see anywhere that Commune stated they are trying to spread socialism across Europe.
Even if they weren't, as you've said, the Prussians are the ones able to dictate the narrative. The Commune at this point can't. And
yeah, and the Russians are probably going to get told when they try and start this, are going to go, "You're not at war with France. The fuck are you doing?"
This.
It's
Are you
because
telling me? Are you telling me that the Russian Empire, the British Empire, the Italian Kingdom, the Austro-Hungarian Empire are going to come to the defense of a bunch of communists?
Yes, because of one thing. The Germans have just broke a peace treaty.
On the other hand,
No,
You've
they haven't.
broken a truce with France, and then the government of France.
No, they haven't. No, they haven't.
Fleet, shut up for a second. As the question states, the Paris government is now the legitimate government of France.
No, it didn't.
They won.
No, it didn't. It said they
That's
captured the leaders of the national government and the French army.
Yeah,
and a socialist
and
France
they've
now
taken
exists.
the country. The revolution is successful. They are the government of France.
That just because a revolution is
so the
successful
powers
doesn't make you the legitimate government.
Yeah, I'll point to the Soviets, where even when the Soviets hadn't taken full control of the country, because they held the capital and they held the seat of government, they were treated as a legitimate government. And that's how it worked at the time, when you stuff like the Russian ambassadors to the Hungarians during their revolution. Because the revolutionary Hungarian government held Budapest, they were treated as a legitimate government of Hungary. And you want the Germans to break international order, break a truce and a peace treaty right after they've signed it, because they don't like the French government.
That is a fundamental misunderstanding of how international policy works, Fox. I've never heard of
this.
It's going to come down to two critical things. One, can the French Commune put out the right propaganda, because that's what it is, to foreign nations to make sure that the populace of those foreign nations are not under threat from them? That's going to be one. And two, is the Paris Commune willing, Lexus, let me in, please. Thank you. Is the Paris Commune going to be willing to uphold the commitments, or at least the foreign commitments, of the previous government? If both of those things are true, and realistically, if only the second thing is 100% true, and the first thing is can afford being a little less true, the support for Germany or foreign forces outside of France to go in and topple what is now, legitimacy concerns aside, the seated government of France and its territories, is going to be less than if the Paris Commune loses the propaganda war and rejects the treaties and agreements made by the prior government.
Yeah.
If they decide, so the biggest thing for this government is going to be, do we uphold are treaties and the preceding treaties and agreements.
Yeah, and from just checking for what we know of them from French sources, they were planning on abiding by the treaty from that war.
Well, that would probably mean they just about squeezed through surviving. I mean, from what I'd heard, I assume they would just tear up all the documents because that's just
Big no-no in Europe.
I mean, they are a commune
Yeah,
after all.
it's-
They exist to tear up, documents.
Yeah,
Wait.
and
Don't just assume because they call themselves a commune, it is immediately what you think of as a Marxist communist.
No, I didn't say it was
even Marxists don't agree what Marxism is.
Yeah, I didn't say they were Marxism. I said they were a commune. That's like if I wanted to
communes
call
have
them.
self-preservation.
Yeah, but
as
you keep
well.
stating commune like you're expecting them to be Soviet-like.
What? No.
Yeah, you were-
they're the Paris Commune. They're not related to communism. If I wanted to call them communists, I'd call
Okay.
them communists.
You did call them
Please.
communists earlier.
And your description of their goals and antics makes them seem a lot like tankies. So that's what colors the discussion one way or another, right?
I mean, at the end of the day, they were they were a short-lived part of history that was honestly quite wasteful in terms of lives and property damage and the damage done to the French state in the aftermath of a devastating war.
Anyway,
It's also the source of a lot of labor laws, safety regulations, the advent of the union, and where we get a lot of anti-exploitation stuff because it's the founding place of socialism. Just a couple of little things.
I don't think all that can be attributed to just the commune.
Yeah. Because most of it outside of the commune was introduced in reaction to the commune.
Honestly, the Paris Commune could be really dumb down to a armed union group. Because that's practically what they were. They were emphasizing a lot on what we would expect from a union group. A lot of their demands was just basically, good pay, union. It is mostly just anti.
exploitation.
Yeah, and also
just-
anti-church, but that's another thing.
Yeah, but I'm just reading through this. It's like it's stuff like actually having protections for workers getting paid. Like, I know that stuff was shit back in the day, but Jesus.
But yeah, it is literally just a armed union group
Shall we move on from this
that
question?
accidentally took over the country or the city for 2 months.
When your shit
Yeah, let's
posting
go ahead.
gets out of hand and now you're the leader of the revolution.
Yeah, yeah.
What do wait,
Alright,
what am I doing?
Let's kick
Oh,
the can down the road.
yeah. Steve Clark, back to Taranto. Alex, if Ark Royal was doing the strike instead, what changes do we see in the plan? Well, Alex isn't
Well,
here,
Alex isn't here,
so doesn't matter.
Ask Sunday.
Yeah. Douglas Yoiti asks, sometime between the 1890s and the 1900s, the Imperial Federation is formed, considering that... Excuse me 1 second! Hello?
Aerial conferences where the
apologies.
Federation
Hang on.
is
Whoa,
proposed.
hold on. Whoa, hold. Stop the presses. Hang on.
Yeah.
I need to read the question out.
We
Well, we
kind of
did
already
that.
did, but okay.
But, fine.
We took over
Wait,
for
you're
half a
fine.
second. He's yet to jump out.
I'm
We
not-
just finished the question, that's all.
Yeah. How far in are you?
It was
just-
either that or they had to
Nothing.
listen to me sing
We
the
just
Jeopardy
started. We
theme.
just finished reading out the question, that's all.
Considering that most history is not majorly changed to the World War II, slight problem with that. If you have managed to form the Imperial Federation at the time where it can make the most impact, aka when it's originally proposed in the 1890s, that's assuming they can overcome the whole racism bit and also the whole social fabric of the culture that the Imperial Federation is founded in bit. Assuming they can overcome that, and the fact that now a majority of the Empire's population are Indians. So, again, they'll have to overcome that as well. Again, that all ties into the whole racism and social construct bit. But assuming they can overcome all of that, and the prospect of uplifting gets underway, by World War I, the Imperial Federation will already be on its way to becoming a juggernaut. It'll be as powerful. It'll be. Can I?
All right, because
Let
I
him finish.
think because you're going down the rabbit hole like what? Because you interrupted me when I was talking about it. Is the issue with this question is we don't have a specific date. It just says between the is it 1890s to 1900s?
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
10-year band in which it stood up in.
Okay, because there's two and a half different imperial conferences there. And there's two very different Imperial Federation
Let's
frameworks.
Okay, go through them. Okay, here's what I think we should do. You seem to know a bit, Foxo, so go through both of them, and then I think, given the framing of the question, we should probably pick the one that would have the most impact. But we should at least address both. Go on,
The issue
Foxo.
is we don't have a cutoff date, and so you're looking at roughly several different versions of Federation, because one of them, there's a good chance that Australia doesn't exist as one unit, and the same could be said for Canada.
Yeah, it's
And sort of like you look at the Canadian Confederation, which is actually in the wrong word. I'm thinking of the Australians. It's loose enough for the Dominions that early Imperial Federations were about confederating. How many different groups of colonies do you confederate into Dominion status? And the Imperial Federation at that point is a federation of dominions with the UK on top. It's where you see the early framework for stuff like the Dominion of East Africa, which is just Kenya and Zimbabwe. The Confederation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland. Where actually it's where you see a lot of the finding work for Nigeria as well, but that federation is going to interact with the world wars completely differently to, say, the 1910 to 1912 federation, where you're looking at a sort of de-evolved parliament of the white dominions, but you've still got the colored colonies as well. It's like if I had a day, I could actually tell you how the federation would be structured, and it's really important with the Second World War is if, say, the East African Dominion exists, and 'cause a lot of the plans were early on was to give it the same rights as the white dominions, right? Canada, Australia. That will interact very differently with stuff like the war in Ethiopia and decolonization. So you've gone from a organized British Empire to a parliamentary Commonwealth. It's a bit of a bit too broad for actually giving an answer for.
Yeah, I think anything more specific than the British military or whatever it's styled as in this timeline has a lot more money, a lot more commitments, and a lot more resources to throw at problems. Is getting into speculative fiction.
I wouldn't even able to say that, because remember, when the original Imperial Federation in the 1890s, you're looking at a different political layout of the British Isles. Like, a major question we'd have to answer this question is, okay, does the Irish Revolution succeed? Because remember that in the 1890s version of the Federation, Ireland itself was supposed to be directly integrated into the UK as a constituent part of the UK in the same way that Wales was, instead of being the weird de facto dominion / colony. And it's like, yeah, like, give us a date and I can actually work with you.
Specificity in questions like this absolutely matters.
Well, it's like a 30-year period. Do you not know how much changes the British Empire in that 30 years?
Well, it's a 10-year period, isn't it? Yeah, 18. It's a 10-year window for forming, but if you have a much more lockstep, unified British Empire, that's going to impact how the British Empire interacts with World War One. And then how that's going to have a knock-on effect for World War II. Like, the question in some ways contradicts itself in the nicest way, because you cannot have such a radical change in the first among equals world power, that is the British Empire pre-1890, and not have it have impacts on its diplomacy and signaling in the run-up to World War One, its coordination with allies in World War One, how it manages the post-war era, and then how it does the signaling in the run-up to World War II, and how it manages its allies in World War II.
Yeah.
And all those are going to have stacking impacts on the world that this country comes into.
Because, for example, if you go on like the conventional ones, well, you would think as the integrated white dominions of the Federation, that sort of idea comes around in the late 1890s. That's one that gets turned into a plan for the early 1900s Imperial conferences. You're looking at a British Empire that's starting to decolonize. I don't want to come off as rude, but that could cause a lot of issues, because you might have made the First World War about the British Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Americans and the French and the Germans and the Russians are going to be swarming over the British Empire.
It depends. It's not quite so clear-cut as that. The Americans are probably not going to move in at that point. The Germans are basically going to go, look, either we go now in 1914 or whatever year it is, or we don't go at all. They're basically going to justify it as, we need to rip parts of Russia away from Russia and weld them to ourselves to get our own form of, you know, equivalent to what the British are doing. The French will probably...
I think that's not what I meant. What I meant is, in the geopolitics of the time, the British functionally starting to decolonize in appearance.
by-
Granting, like creating the dominions was seen as a sign of weakness.
Mm,
Starting to create stuff like the African dominions.
yeah.
At that point, you're going to have the Germans going, "Oh, the British are a paper tiger."
When they're not.
So at that point, you might have the Germans not backing down in the Morocco crisis.
I mean, while I would say paper tiger, there is something to be said. Like, yes, there is that possibility, but I'm also sat there looking at the British fleet, which will probably still be as strong as it was historically. Especially when you bear in mind the whole thing about one of the things about the Federation is that the various different dominions were supposed to... Yes, the British would protect the trade between the various dominions with the Royal Navy UK branch, or the Imperial Navy, you know, across the world, and would help reinforce the various dominions. But when it came to regional defense, the dominions were supposed to have their own... Sorry, the different parts of the Federation were supposed to have their own navies and armies. So, while that would still be in its infancy in the 1900s under this whole scenario, that will still mean that a preponderance of orders would be flowing into British yards for things like protected cruisers, large armored cruisers, maybe a battle cruiser here for Australia, a battle cruiser for a pair of battle cruisers for the Australasian fleet, a battle cruiser for the Dominion of South Africa, two cruisers and two flotillas of destroyers for the Canadians, and so on and so forth. Yes, it's not a massive amount at this point, but it's enough extra finance that I would think, especially when you add to that the probable still historical Royal Navy build-up, to retain this core of strength while the beginnings of this Dominion build-up are occurring. I don't know if the Germans are going to look at that and go, "Ah, yes, paper tiger."
Well, they are, though. I think they are. Yes, the British can swell forces. But from an outsider perspective, that looks like the British Empire is dissolving.
A lot of it is going to depend on the exact document signed and the signaling made after that. It's, again...
Hence why which federation forms is important.
Yeah,
I feel like we have, we have kind of,
this question is another case of specific beats general.
Yep.
Again, as Foxo has said, there's at least 3 different starting points that you can start from.
Obviously, very different interpretations of the Federation.
Yep. Typical gunner.
All that failed.
Yeah. Typical gunner officer asks, opinions on the Helldiver dive bomber. Do you think it's accident prone and quite unlikely by the air crews? Do you think it's the worst dive bomber in World War II? Well, I wouldn't call it the worst dive bomber in World War II. There are other aircraft that could quite handily waltz away with that title. But compared to the aircraft that came before it, it was less reliable than the SBD. And Rex does... Honestly, you know what? Go and watch Rex's Hangars video on the Helldiver. He really does go deep into that aircraft's history.
He's asking our opinions.
But in my opinion, in regards to just opinion of the aircraft, yep, it had its flaws. Not the worst dive bomber of World War II by any means. There are other aircraft far more capable of taking that title.
Of course, Fairey Battle.
Yes. Well, no. The Fairey Battle's not a dive bomber. It's a...
It was.
Ju-88.
The what, Moe?
The Yungas 88.
You did not just sit there and call the Ju-88 a bad dive bomber. It is. That is no. Sorry, no.
Yes, you did.
No, the Ju-88
Okay.
is not a bad dive bomber at all.
But before we get into a
You are coping and seething.
I am not.
okay,
You just can't explain what you're
before we
seeing.
go on a completely irrelevant tangent, Helldiver dive bomber. Do you think it's accident prone and quite unlikable by the aircrew? Yes, especially early Helldiver. Do you think it's the worst dive bomber in World War One? No, not by a long shot. The Helldiver, from a technical aspect, was one of the better dive bombers in World War II.
It makes logical sense in terms of development.
Yeah, it's the biggest. The Helldiver and the M14, M16 platforms have the same problem. They didn't quite do enough testing before they fielded it to make sure that what they were fielding worked.
Yeah, that's probably
The-
about right.
By the time Curtis made the N+1 updates to the design to rectify its shortcomings, it was one of the best aircrafts for its role and generation.
It's just
It's
mostly come down to the fact that they're rushing for a war.
Yeah.
And they had to make so many changes.
Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah.
they didn't have to make those that litany of changes, the opinion on the the Helldiver is a very different story.
The most important thing for the Helldiver is just quite literally range.
I mean, Knight, you see the Ju-88 is not ideal for dive bombing? No, it's not ideal for dive bombing, but the whole point with the Ju-88 as a platform is that it's a tactical medium aircraft. In its basic
You don't dive bomb
configuration-
with tactical aircraft. You do not dive bomb with twin-engined aircraft.
There you go.
You can do if you build it for it, and the Ju-88 was built for it.
You do not dive bomb with tactical aircraft
Mosquito,
unless you're a B-25.
Mosquito,
You don't-
B-25.
You don't dive bomb with a
Mosquitoes
mosquito,
You can dive bomb with
nor did B-25s.
The point I'm
the
making.
closest you get is when they were strafing submarines.
But I would also point out that when we think of dive bombing in relation to Ju-88, it is a more shallow dive than something we would think of from
Degrees of
Helldiver.
dive is too many dive for a twin-engine aircraft.
It's not if you build it right. These hard and fast lines you two are drawing do not exist.
They do.
They don't.
Oh, it's the 87. That's why I'm so confused. Okay. All right.
Yes, we're not talking about Stukas.
Yeah, I got very confused there for a second.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing of, do you want to build something that is all singing and all dancing and is going to cost £1,005 just for one bolt, and you're going to need somebody with 18 years of college level education in order to tighten the tires onto it? Or do you want something that you can field? That's where this kind of question comes from. And Sea Daughters, I see your Starcom reference. Don't think that would get by me. So yes, while you probably could theoretically build a twin-engine dive bomber in this time frame, you probably couldn't field it if you could even afford it in the first place.
I mean, they did build one. It's called the Ju-88, and it did prove at least basically effective
And it's
in that role.
amazing. The Luftwaffe didn't dive bomb with it unless they had to.
Anyway, moving on.
Like, you look at its missions, it's level bombing.
Well, yes, that was
And
its
strafing.
primary role, and torpedo bombing, and being turned into a night fighter. It's the and also being turned into a missile. The Mistral was weird.
But it's like,
Um,
you do not dive bomb with it.
But anyway, bone build.
Engines on wings and dive bombing do not mix.
Oh, take yeah.
Wing
mill-
routino like it.
Bone Meal Boy asks, in the Admiral conversion scenario, would the Royal Navy retain single-engined aircraft for its smaller carriers? Politely, the Royal Navy would retain single-engined aircraft for all of its carriers. Even with 2 Admiral conversions, I'm sorry, the Lexingtons are sat right over there as bigger hulls, and the United States didn't adopt twin-engined aircraft. Now, I don't doubt that with conversions the size of the Admirals, and given the RN and RAF's proclivity towards twin-engine experimentation, you would see some twin-engine types proliferate into the RN. You are not going to see a wholesale replacement of single-engined aircraft. And especially as high-octane fuel comes in, which massively increases the power you can get out of engines, just because of, the increased octane of the fuel, you might see the twin-engined aircraft at least temporarily phased out as they go, okay, that we can get the same horsepower out of a single engine that we used to get out of 2. So our next generation of, given what twin engines are good at, the twin-engined aircraft would probably be Scout Torpedo. Because, that gives you that's the best role you can probably put that platform into.
It
Just to
generally
check,
depends.
which decade are you talking about?
It's
Yeah,
okay.
that is the important part.
Yeah, it's going to depend on a number of factors. One, what do the smaller carriers look like in situations where you have 2 or 3 admirals converted to CV uses? How small is a smaller carrier in this frame of reference? What do the treaties look like? How is the carrier displacement going to be affected by the fact that the Royal Navy now has 3-ish unquestionably 40,000 ton aircraft carriers, albeit conversions? Does the RAF still get control of the fleet air arm? Because that's going to impact your engine development. And if you don't get the high horsepower engines developed in the UK, they may decide that, well, we have the room and we're willing to take the cut to the air group to get more powerful aircraft, so we'll use twin engines. There's also the reliability aspect of an aircraft with 2 engines over an aircraft with a single engine. You will probably still see some single engine aircraft in service. The question is, what portion of the air group is going to be made up by those single aircraft? Are they going to be relegated to very specific strike roles or combat air patrol roles? Or are they going to be more generalist?
I can tell you this: a twin-engine aircraft would be perfect for point defense in the 30s.
Yeah, I mean, you think of Lightning or Mosquito carrier based is going to be.
They're 40s.
I know the Lightning is.
Those are a bit too big, but
I
yeah.
know the Lightning is an American design. I'm just thinking of that design concept. Don't at me.
An early
You're-
Hornet?
You're going to.
No, you're
God, no.
You're
I meant
going
for
to.
30s.
You're
No,
going
why?
to see because you have these fantastically large flight decks.
I think we're overstating the size here of these conversions.
Relative to what the Royal Navy was working with in the run-up to World War II, this is a market improvement.
And
Looking at what, at least 270 meters?
Yeah, this is a significant improvement over, because the Royal Navy's average carrier displacement's what, 25,000 tons, and now you're dealing with a 40,000 ton carrier.
I thought Ark Royal was a little bit heavier than that.
Yeah, but Ark Royal wasn't pushing the limits. I think she was just shy of the tonnage limitation under Washington. She was built post Washington. And the Lexingtons are 5 to 10,000 tons smaller. It's
Now I will
Now,
point
consider
out
that hood
name.
is just for size. Yeah, hood's 263 meters.
You could definitely get 270 out of a Admiral
Yeah.
conversion as long as they
that's
went
only
with.
an extra 60 meters compared to the Courageous class.
Okay, so
Like-
wait, here's the thing. You stop thinking about twin-engine aircraft in the land-based sense. Those will never fit. You
I'm not
that is true.
thinking- That's never.
You need to
entered
think
my
much.
First of all, hold it. First of all, never entered my thought process at all. Just no. I'm aware that the twin-engined aircraft you would build for a carrier are markedly different than the twin-engined aircraft you would put on land. And I do think you would see twin-engined aircraft on a carrier, but not as fighters.
You would.
No, absolutely not.
In this time period, you would.
Absolutely not.
Especially in the 30s, before
Absolutely not.
Absolutely, yes.
Wait, how else are you going to get performance out of your aircraft without more power?
No, Fleet, what do you think Air Forces and Navies are looking at? The heavy fighter is a child in the 1920s. The use of heavy armament on aircraft.
And like you said, before the advent of high octane fuel and high power single engine aircraft, the only way for you to get the performance that you want is with multiple engines.
I mean,
Yeah,
I think this is a massive overgeneralization and misses some of the advantages of
It's not.
single-engine fighter aircraft.
you're
We're not saying there isn't advantages to a single engine fighter aircraft, and they probably would adopt a good number of those as well.
you're
Because
you're looking. Sorry, Foxo, but you're looking at a 20,000 deep load tonnage increase going from
I'll
Arc
tell you
Royal
what.
to Hood.
I'll tell you what.
Can
I'll tell you
I
what.
just finish what I want to say?
No, I need to get this last bit in on mine because this does matter.
It'll help you doing here.
No, because I think I'm about to meet you halfway. I think.
Then let her finish and then meet her halfway.
No, I'm going to.
Because it's a bit of information that'll help put things into context for you.
Yes, but. All right, all right.
Are you familiar with the Western Whirlwind?
Yes, I am familiar with the Western Whirlwind.
It's a twin-engined heavy fighter
Yes.
with 4 cannons in the nose.
Yes, I know what the Whirlwind
It is not that much bigger than a Hurricane.
Yes, I know.
We're not so. And for its time period, it actually got much better performance than the Hurricane, but
Yes,
that's besides the point.
Infinitely.
So that's the twin-engined aircraft we're talking about, not what people think of as the twin-engined heavy fighter.
I said it before.
I just wanted to clear that up. That was more for chat than you,
Okay.
because those are 2 very different concepts.
Now, I accept that it's possible to build twin-engine aircraft like that, even back in the 20s, of, basically taking the frame and rough sizings of a single-engined aircraft and putting 2 engines on it. But given the doctrine of the period, I don't, well, not at first, I don't see the twin-engined being adopted for that role. If I may just go on a little bit of a ramble for a second. Because
I call next dibs on the talking stick.
All right. So, I could see single-engine fighters being retained for the early period. In fact, well, for the entire period, but not exclusively. I think if you're going to see twin-engined aircraft, they're going to be in the Scout strike role. So, Scout torpedo bombers. But what I think the Navy's going to rapidly cotton on to is, well, we can make a twin-engined aircraft with significant performance. And it can go a significant distance. But our fighters can't. What if our next twin-engined aircraft could not only be the strike part of the strike, but also escort it? And that's why I think in the late 20s, early 30s, you'll see something emerge that can fulfill the role of a scout, a escort/heavy fighter, and a torpedo bomber all rolled into one. But you will still also have on the carrier single-engine fighters for point defense and rapid reaction around the task force.
Yes,
My talking stick.
you went so close.
My talking stick. Not yours. Mine. Mine.
Ruinon's talking
So, while Foxo has a pressure blow-off valve, if you have admiral conversions, that is going to have a traumatic impact on how the British or how the Royal Navy develops its doctrine. Additionally, there's still the question of Beatty being Beatty, and maybe he thinks at least that he has to sell off the Fleet Air Arm to the RAF in order to get the admirals converted. That's not an unpossibility. If you still have a situation where the RAF, broadly the Air Ministry, is not interested in developing single engine performance, the Royal Navy may still decide to go with twin engines so they can get the higher performance airframes, because they don't have a single engine that can meet the performance requirements that they need for it. And that is going, because in this time period, the Royal Navy is still, to one extent or another, still trying to figure out exactly how it wants to use its carriers, how it wants to arm the carriers, how it wants to do carrier operations, basically. And having these 2 or 3 massive relative to their peers. I have the talking stick, Fleek.
Sorry, I just couldn't resist laughing at the massive.
It's mine next.
Yes, it is. Foxo's next. Then it's going to have significant impacts on what the Royal Navy expects out of its carriers, what the Royal Navy is going to develop or put money into the development of in terms of weapons and aircraft, and it's going to expect how they it's going to impact how they deploy and use those carriers. So they're going to get what they think is going to be the maximum effectiveness, and that's going to change now that they have such larger flight decks and hangar spaces. Foxo now has the talking stick.
Fleet, you were so close to the idea of the heavy fighter, the concept of the heavy fighter that grew out of the 1920s. With one minor mistake. For stuff like the point defense and the rapid reaction role, the twin-engined aircraft is better in that time period.
Oh. Yes, it might be, but that wasn't really something I was thinking about, because I was basically going on the whole... I was basically running off of, if you have a limited number, if you have you have limited space on a carrier, that's just the way it is. And despite the smaller size of these twin-engined aircraft, they are still a more valuable resource that take up more space than your single-engined aircraft would take up. That's just a fact of life. And for my view, if you can have a limited number of these aircraft in the 20s, when the advantages they offer, yes, you have is performance, range, and reliability, I would want to channel most or all of that in the 20s into my strike and reconnaissance platform, because that gives me more reach out and touch and reach out and search capability than my opponents have. And in carriers, that really, I know I'm stating the obvious here to everyone in the panel, because you all know this, that really does matter. And that's the reason why when I got to the 30s and aircraft performance is increasing yet again, and you've got the high octane fuel and more high performance engines coming in, even without the push for high performance engines just do get more powerful. You get to a point where you can go with the knowledge and experience that you have, and the arrival of things like all-metal aircraft, or monocoque aircraft, or aluminium tube aircraft, or things like that, where your structural stability goes up, but your weight goes down, and you've got more higher performance engines. At that point, you can look into the concept of an aircraft that can be a heavy fighter, a reconnaissance platform, a torpedo bomber, all in one. That was my thought process. It wasn't that I thought that the single-engined aircraft as a fighter is better in the 20s. It's just, it's like, I have the talking
Right.
stick. I have the talking
Let
stick.
him talk. Let him talk.
It's that if I have a limited space on a carrier, as I do, and I'm probably only gonna get one twin-engine type out of the Air Ministry, I'm gonna want that twin-engine type in the 20s to be primarily focused on range, performance, reliability, to slot into that scout and strike role.
I don't think you're getting that.
But Fleet,
Like, right.
the twin-engined aircraft in this period.
Can we give Dragon the talking stick now? Because he hasn't had the talking
Are
stick.
the only platform that can do multi-role.
So,
It can be a fighter, it can be a reconnaissance aircraft, it can be the strike aircraft. You can have an airwing composed of one, if need be, two aircraft. If you're
ironically,
when you go with single seaters, you need multiple different aircraft for the same job. If you have a smaller airwing where every aircraft can do all the roles, it's more efficient and effective than an airwing where only 12 aircraft can be fighters, only 12 can be bombers, only 6 can do long-range reconnaissance.
Okay, talking stick to Dragon now, because
Right.
Dragon was going to get words in edgewise.
so even then, I think you still get two different types of twin-engine fighter Fox, well, twin-engine plane Foxo, because even at this point, you are not going to see one plane to do all of this. You just don't. But in a counterfighter fleet, actually, your reconnaissance plane, and this is going to sound abhorrent, but this is what they were actually looking at, is more than likely going to be 4 engines. As the Royal Navy did look at and very seriously planned it up, because a 2-engine one, while it does have the range capability, 4-engine one allowed to go at a certain speed, which ironically is not faster per se, it's actually slower than average. Also, you can then, this is a purely dedicated one. You won't carry many of these. Also, for an Admiral class conversion, you're probably looking in the range of 60 to 70 aircraft with twin engines. If you're going for single engine planes, you're probably more looking like 90 upwards, potentially, depending on the planes in use. Remember, these are big carriers and have a lot of internal volume. You probably see a thing where it's a case of you have a fighter variant, and then you have your strike variant. The strike one's probably strike one is probably at least 2, possibly 3-man plane. The fighter might even then still be a twin man, because the Royal Navy very much doesn't like the idea of having a navigator with the single engine fighter. And so it makes sense they would go with this for a twin engine, especially if the twin engine is meant to have more range. The doctrine at the time is very fluid, because this is the 20s we're talking about, the earliest days of carriers. So while they have ideas, but they want a reconnaissance, they want a fighter, and they want a strike, it's more than plausible they will settle on 2 to 3 aircraft per carrier, types per carrier.
Yep.
Limited number of these dedicated recon, and then probably a preference on strike over fighter.
Yeah,
is what you'll likely end up seeing.
Yeah, that is.
Because you'll
that is.
probably see what the Royal Navy planned to do, which was the same airframe when it came to twin-engine aircraft, the same airframe, but one has integrated cannon and machine gun armament, one doesn't.
I don't
The
think
one that doesn't the strike aircraft.
I don't.
Because that's what they wanted to do.
I don't think in the 20s that you get that level of multi-use out of an airframe. I think at that point you are still going to see two different airframes.
Okay, we've
Fleet, you love the French. No, Fleet, you love the French. Look at the French aviation in the 20s.
Yes, and it was a flawed
They're
concept.
doing it.
Oh, hideous.
It's also hideous. Okay, we've been working on this question for about 15 minutes at this point.
We have, but I'm still not done.
Okay, I'm because
Yeah, can we
it's
just
fleet-
move on? We're starting to piss people off now. So shut up and take the L.
I
Why?
not,
Why?
it's not
I?
about taking
Why?
the L. No one's lost anything. We're just having a discussion.
Let's. I'm going to keep my eye on the clock. Fleet, you got. I'm going to give you 90 seconds.
I mean,
To get your
it's
last
not
point
yours
across,
to
and then
give.
we're
It
gonna
is
move
my
on.
show after all. But anyway,
Yes, but you do tend. Everybody tends to run over each other, so I'm going to try and keep this because if you just go on and on, we'll be here for another 5 to 10 minutes because somebody else is going to have something to say.
But basically,
response?
the only thing isn't so much more me adding to the thing, it's just sort of a clarification. It is worth pointing out that when I did discuss the hypothetical airwing, this was me discussing it. It was from a position of knowledge and personal preference, trying to get a bearing on what I think I would like and how I would stretch it out, and then trying
You
to
are
apply that
wrong,
knowledge.
King of Nipples. You
But-
are wrong.
But as Dragon does say, quite accurately, and I think he's absolutely right in this, the doctrine is very fluid. Without this actually occurring, it's hard to say exactly what would have happened. But he did put forward a very convincing argument and set of cases for what might happen. So I think basically with this question, my final 10 cents would be, we've had a very vibrant discussion. Most of the points made here are fairly valid, basically owing to the breadth of the question and how fluid doctrine was in the period. And I would suggest to the audience that you do draw your own conclusions from the discussion that we have had.
I would like to make
Not
a
bad.
small
20
comment.
seconds there.
One comment, quickly.
I think you guys are mistaking twin engine and range.
And
Being twin engine does not equal having more range. Bigger
No.
aircraft
No.
equates to more range.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
This is entirely true.
Crying out loud, people.
Release me.
Typical gunnery officer. Question 3. How would you rate these World War II service pistols or sidearms? The M1911A1, overrated. The Webley Mark IV, unknown.
Oof.
Luger
Noted.
PLA,
Oof.
unrated, overrated. Nambu
Oof.
pistol, unknown. Tokarev TT38, Russian, therefore EU. Beretta 1934, unknown in all categories, terms of reliability, stopping power, rate of fire, and availability.
Honestly,
The 1911 is extremely over-engineered. I don't like it.
I mean, politely, to give a blunt
Okay,
answer, these are service
me the
pistols.
list.
These are service pistols. They are sidearms. They are adjutants to a person's primary weapon. They fundamentally don't matter when you're fighting a war like World War II. They are a last-ditch, oh shit, I'm out of everything else, arm. And
Bold of
fundamentally...
you to assume that.
And fundamentally, if you, as long as it makes bullet come out of end of pistol and doesn't jam all the damn time, politely it serves. When it comes to a full-on war-fighting context. Because if you're down to a pistol, the only thing that matters at that point, does that weapon function reliably, and does it have a decent magazine? That's what matters.
And
As
that
in-
is what we're
Matters
here to
more
discuss.
Than you think. Matters a lot more than you think, Fleet.
Yeah, stopping power is quite an important thing. So what
No,
are we saying?
like Dragon,
Put them down.
shut. It matters so much more because it's not going to matter to the rifleman. He has his fucking rifle. But
What do you think
rear
people
line
get?
troops, artillery crews,
Yeah. What do you think people got
behind
before
enemy
carbines
lines.
exist?
officers, when tanks come, tank crews, air crews.
There's a
Building
lot of
clearing,
people that uses a pistol.
I'm not
confined
saying...
space operators.
Yeah, and
Just in the grand scheme
What-
of the Second World War, how many battles were decided by blokes with pistols?
Now,
It's not
he,
battles.
he never
Yeah.
asked for the grand scheme of things, by the way.
yeah, he was asking on the local level, like as singular handguns, which is how do you rate them?
Who do I look like? Forgotten Weapons?
Okay, so
No.
that's-
But you've got 3 firearms people in the chat with you.
Well, then go
Yeah.
nuts!
so the
You're not
19
letting us.
Well, go nuts
the
then!
1911 the
Let Rowan speak.
The 1911 is going to win on stopping fire. I still think it's too mechanically complex, and I don't like it, and I think it's overrated. But the 1911 is going to win on stopping power. The Webley Mark IV, that's a revolver, if memory serves, so that's going to be pretty much reliable as the cartridge is.
It's the most reliable out of the bunch.
Yeah, it's what, chambered in
455 atoms? Is it 455 atoms? It might actually be. It's something equivalent to a 45 APC.
It sounds very expensive.
Or ACP.
So that's gonna have stopping power. It's going to win in terms of reliability.
0.455 and 45 ACP. Yeah.
There we go.
That's going to be roughly nominally equivalent to the 1911, but it'll have lower rate of fire. Availability is an industrial concern. I imagine they've got a billion of the.
There's a lot of Webleys.
Luger PO8 is going to have a higher rate of fire. The reliability is probably going to be spitting distance.
Dog shit.
Okay, there you go. There's an answer. Stopping power, because it's chambered in 9mm, it's going to have less stopping power. It won't, in this time frame, necessarily have any higher capacity because you don't quite have double stack magazines.
No Luger has higher capacity than 1911, that's for sure.
Yeah, you'll still fit more rounds.
Which Luger?
Yeah, you'll still have more rounds in the same volume. You can do some interesting things with some of the Luger variants where they can turn into machine pistols, but I don't know enough about the Nambu.
I just want to clarify about the Luger. Why I say reliable, it's a very mechanically reliable design on paper. The Luger action doesn't operate particularly well in theater.
Now, if we're talking about reliability in theaters, then we're gonna have to knock the 1911 down.
Yeah, which what I thought what I thought Rona was talking about, which was going it's overcomplicated, and I assumed.
I mean,
unreliable.
Complicated, quote unquote. It's not actually that complicated.
For all of our non-American viewers, you may have heard of something called the Cult of the 1911. There is a subset of gun owners that
still exists.
The 1911.
My two world wars.
1911 is the pinnacle of handgun design, and nothing since then has ever come close to it. I will take.
It's not that they call everything that comes after in 1911 as derivative.
I will take any Glock. I would say any SIG, but not anymore.
The Beretta would like a word.
No, 320 upon ye.
Okay, I'll take anything except for 320. I would take almost any modern handgun over a 1911 nowadays. And when I say that in gun crowds, I get looked at like a heretic.
In American crowds, by the way, not.
Yes, yeah. And then people make 1911 compacts, and they put 1911 in 9mm. Why? It's a steel pistol that's still single stack. You've now taken away the only thing it had going for it, which was the extra muzzle, which was the extra terminal ballistic impact of 45. It doesn't make any sense. At that point, just buy a Hellcat.
Should we get back to question though?
Why would you want a tank?
Sure.
Never mind. That joke died its cradle.
Yeah. A lot of the 1911's design comes from the fact that the Americans made a shit ton of them in World War One, and they still used them in World War Two.
So the big thing about 1911 is, yes, mechanically it's ingenious. The problem is 1911. You could do so many more things better than 1911, but the U.S. cheaped out.
It's a lot of quite a few very small milled parts in there.
And then obviously the other problem is just the U.S. insistency about 45 ACP.
Yeah.
That's the nature of the 1911 issue. Reliability, like a Webley will go bang more reliably than 1911.
Webley
Other
can
than that-
reliably fire without pulling the trigger, with the trigger missing.
Other than that, this is going to be a little bit annoying, but when you Nambu pistol is so broad of a term.
It do be that way, don't it? I looked at that, like, even a gun idiot like me, and I will admit I'm something of an idiot when it comes to firearms, in anything other than the general sense. I looked at that question, I went, which Nambu pistol does he mean?
It's like saying an Arasaka.
Yeah, it's like...
I'm presuming he's talking about the Type 14. The classic, the classic image of what you think a Japanese pistol of the era is.
Oh, the China War ones.
Yeah, pretty much. Or basically, you could technically quote unquote call it a Luger knockoff. Someone's gonna shoot me for saying that, but you know.
Well, so I've seen it, and it's might to be a bit offensive, but I've seen them referred to a lot online as Chulas.
Yeah.
Big Chinese Lugers.
The big thing about Nambu is the only one that comes in a really weird ass cartridge. I think it's 8x22 Nambu. It's it gets the job done. The big thing about the Nambu is that it's much less prominent in the rear line troops. It is definitely more of an officer weapon compared to pretty much all the rest of these nominees. So it's hard to say how well it performed in terms of compared to all the other pistols. But most people will say that it is probably the one that lacks the most stopping power out of all these, despite the fact that Tokarev and Luger also uses smaller calibers, or actually even the Beretta uses small caliber.
Did you say that it was chambered in 8mm?
Yes, 8x22. It's a Japanese cartridge.
Why? Who hurt them?
Because it's Japan. All their cartridges tends to be smaller.
Who chambers something in 8mm?
A lot of people, actually.
And yes, I know 8mm Mauser exists. I know 8mm Mauser exists. That's a rifle cartridge. Different.
I can almost hear Ruin on literally racking the slide.
Look, the big thing is that there is no way you're getting away from this. The Japanese soldier of the time and officers tends to be smaller statured, and the East Asian governments tends to prefer a smaller caliber rifle or weapon. That's why Arasaka was originally 6.5. Their pistols tend to be in smaller size as well, as you can see with Nambu. It's in 8mm. They really didn't step up to your standard 30 cal until in the 30s.
Boutique calibers, and I realize that every caliber is a boutique. It's like every I'm not going to go there, but it's like every caliber is a boutique caliber until it sees widespread adoption. But I hate boutique calibers.
And as for who uses 8mm, the answer would be the US Army. They use 300 Blackout, which is an 8mm round.
Touche.
Well, to be fair, that's technically quote unquote also a rifle round, but yeah.
It's also
8mm is not a weird number.
it's a weird number for a pistol cartridge. I will die on that hill.
Don't die on the
But-
hill, it's bad for your spine.
Too late. My spine's already right proper fucked, right alongside with my right shoulder.
Oh.
But for a rifle cartridge, yes, 5.7 exists, but also 5.7 is a boutique cartridge.
I'm sorry.
I mean,
32 Smith and Wesson.
Oi.
32.
Which does anybody even chamber anything in that anymore?
A lot of these
Yes,
firearms.
32 ACP is a very, very good self-defense cartridge.
Okay, is it 32 Smith and Wesson or 32 ACP? Because those could be two different rounds.
Smith and
They are
Wesson.
two different rounds, but caliber-wise, they're about the same.
Yes.
You've also got 8mm French, which is
French,
Funny.
and therefore invalid.
you've also technically got the Swedish short and the gun rounds.
By the way, Brett is
And 302 revolver, can't forget, or 32 Webley, which was a favourite of the British Army for a while.
it's just a lot of pistols post World War II got or really fall into the parabellum craze.
Okay, before
People
I have
really like the
stroke
9mm parabellum.
and just start randomly banning people because I'm having a stroke, can we go to Bone Meal Boy's question?
Yes, I
Yeah,
think.
let's move
Embrace,
on. Let's just move on.
embrace 8mm bullet.
Bone Meal Boy asks, in the Admiral conversion scenario, could the twin-engine strike aircraft begin to have a land-based role planned for them similar to the Bettys in the IJN? The Betty was never planned as or operated from Japanese carriers. Unless there's some historical documentation that's thoroughly lost.
I don't think that's the tact the question is taking. I think they are asking if the carrier designed aircraft would be used in a role similar to how the Imperial Japanese forces used Bettys from land bases.
I mean, you can. An aircraft is an aircraft. If it can fly
Don't really
off a
care where it
carrier,
lands.
it can fly off a land base. But at that point, I would raise my hand and go, build a land-based aircraft to fulfill that land-based naval strike role. It'll be better.
Why?
Yeah, it will
Because
be
you
because
probably just get a Buccaneer effect.
you can
It technically depends.
you can. So the realistic answer is yes, they will operate from land bases in certain areas where their lessened support requirements make them more effective than what would notionally be a better purpose-built land-based aircraft. The U.S. did this. The Royal Navy did this. Every navy that had a seagoing air wing did this. If for no other reason than you need to train people. The question is going to be how widespread and how much. At the end of the day, they're going to use the aircraft they have available. They're probably still going to try and push purpose-designed land-based aircraft to those theaters. So saying that they should be planned for land-based roles is pushing it a little bit, but
Yeah.
they will be used from land bases occasionally.
It's also worth pointing out that given the discussion that we had previously, these twin-engined carrier aircraft will not be equivalent to something like Betty at all. They won't be these long-range, especially not during the Second World War, they won't be these long-range, relatively fast, good bomb load aircraft. Things like Betty, things like Ju-88, things like Mosquito and Hornet. These very long-range, twin-engined aircraft that are useful in anti-shipping and tactical strike role. they're not the same things as the twin-engined aircraft we've been discussing for these hypothetical admirals. They're not the same breed.
Moe,
Yes.
West Fleet's kind heart. Did he just call the Hornet long ranged?
No, I was...
Yes, but it was. Well, I think he also put the Mosquito in the same category as the Ju-88.
Yeah. Because, I mean, So
But
to
his
answer
point
the
does still
question-
stand.
so to answer the question of if it's for the strike role, and they've got them in theatre, and they'll deploy carrier strike aircraft to airfields.
Yeah, if it's what they've got.
Because strike aircraft, if you could drop a 2,000-pound bomb on a ship, you can drop a 2,000-pound bomb on a bunker
Mm-hmm.
or a train. Which I think the US did quite a lot with the Dauntlesses.
And Cactus Air Force.
Yeah.
Cactus
And the
Air
British
Force.
do it. And the British do a lot of the Cold War, and the formats do a lot of strike from land bases against land targets in the North Africa campaigns. And if you talk about the strike role, yeah, it can get warheads and foreheads. For the fighter role, it's a lot more dubious.
Yeah,
And
if
no,
an
fuck
air
so.
base has this hypothetical twin engine fighter interceptor on the tarmac and there is an airstrike coming in, they're going to get them in the air.
That feels like a bit of a tangent. We're talking about Betty equivalents. Betty was never a fighter.
It just say, well, it just says two-engine planes, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it also says, well, yeah, it is specifically detailing strike. So
Yeah,
okay.
hence why doing the strike version should say the torpedo and the dive bomber ranged aircraft.
Mea culpa. I will go
Okay,
and
so-
commit Goku.
No.
I'm not gonna lie, you probably see 420 mils in the nose of this thing.
Yeah, probably.
Well,
It's hard
No.
to figure out.
no. You probably see 420 mils on later planes of these type. Not quite the ones originally designed for the Admiral conversions.
And not in the 1920s. You probably see two 20 mils in the 1920s ones.
Well, someone could be funny and see if they could strap 37 mil pom-poms on them. Someone will try.
Mhm.
Vickers is more than willing to give them that option.
Indeed.
Here's your reminder that Short decided to mount two both as 40 mils in the wing routes where the bomb bay, where the bomb wrecks come out on
Yeah.
the Short Sunderland.
Funny.
Okay. Typical Gunner asks, why did the US have some problems in acquiring post-World War
Oh,
II
boy.
domestic tactical or medium jet bomber designs? Not until they acquired the more successful B-57 from the British. The US had the problematic B-45 Tornado, which wasn't problematic. What are you talking about? The prototype XB-43,
There are some
46, 48, and 51. Instead, the US picked the B-57 over these bombers. Well, in regards to very quickly just go through the prototypes, the B-57 is later and much, much better than every single one of them. None of these aircraft come after and have their first flight after 1950.
If you don't mind, may I knock this out of the park?
Yes.
This list of aircraft. 43 was originally a propeller aircraft they strapped jet engines to. But during World War II, so that's not even a consideration. 45, 46, 47, 48 was the US Air Force going, we are going to need jet bombers, so we're just going to give money to these companies to figure something out. 45, 46 is specifically designed for 4 jet engines, and 47, 48 is designed for 6 engine. And one of the biggest thing about these 4 aircraft? They are not medium jet bombers. or they're not tactical in nature. They are strategic bombers.
They have replacements for the B-24s.
They were never, ever designed to replace something like a B-25 or a B-26. There's a reason why that, the 45 and the 47 was adopted. 45 was simply because it is the first one that finish.
And
it was better than 46 anyway.
Yeah, and to be fair to 45, despite some of its issues, it works. And it does give more capability than some of the aircraft it replaces.
And another thing, if you look at the size of a V-45, it is infinitely bigger than a... The only one I did not specify out of this list is the B-51. Why? B-51 went into direct competition with B-57, with the Canberra.
And if you look at the two aircraft, it's kind of...
And the U.S. Air Force picked the Canberra out of one simple reason. They're still in the era of we make really shit jet engines. That's it.
Yeah.
The XB-51...
all of these American domestic aircraft has that one single issue. The American jet engine development has not caught up yet.
Yeah.
And that's where the majority of the problem of these aircrafts comes from.
And it's because a big thing with that is why the B-57 gets picked, despite quite a lot of controversy about it being a non-American design. It's because the Americans don't just buy the B-57, the Canberra.
No, they get it under license.
They buy access to the design, but the biggest thing they get is all the technical information about those Rolls-Royce engines.
Yep.
It's like, those Avons are pretty far ahead of anything the Americans have at this point.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why it's a massive mistake to give them to the Soviets.
This is mostly just down to the fact that the American jet industry and the British jet industry went complete different routes. The Americans are very adamant about axial flow engines, which later down the road they were right. But early on, your axials just don't have anywhere near the compression ratio and thrust capacity compared to a
yes,
centrifugal, I think it's called.
Yeah, centrifugal. That's why British early jet was so successful in the 40s and 50s.
Centrifugal.
Yes.
The centrifugal engines are just not much better.
And then because the Americans did a whole bunch of testing with the B-57s and it's rated it for nuclear strike, which that must not hurt the B-45. It's ilk.
Right.
Yeah.
Bone Mill Boy asked, what happens to the Royal Naval Air Service if the RAF never comes into existence until 1947? Well, this is one of those questions that sounds simple when you ask it, but the moment you look past it, you go, oh, you've just completely rewritten the entire interwar history of British aviation, along with all the design requirements and procurement requirements that would come out of it, along with entirely...
As well as a significant chunk of World War One, because what has changed such that the British government, British military complex, not see a reason to stand up its own separate air force?
The only thing, if this question was what would happen if the Navy made the case to keep a separate air arm to the RAF, and you got both the RAF and the continued existence of the Royal Naval Air Service, that would be a different kettle of fish entirely. But no RAF at all?
Well,
That's...
technically, wouldn't the Royal Flying Corps still exist then?
It would, but the problem that you've got is that the Royal Flying Corps...
Because based on this just sounds like you're gonna end up with not a unified RAF, but a decentralized. You're gonna have your own like Royal Bomber Command or whatever, and like you're just gonna have everything decentralized.
Well, no, it's
into
going to be
different branches.
Well, no, it's going to be Army. It's going to be the Royal Flying Corps of the British Army, which it was, the Royal Naval Air Service, which it was, and that's what you're going to have. But the problem is that fundamentally runs into the realities of World War One and the lessons that were being learned. There's a reason why the RAF is formed when it is, and how it is. It's a reaction and a realization and an acceptance that the aircraft has matured. It is deserving of its own branch of the military, separate from the whims of the army or the navy.
And additionally, you have, because the RAF is split off into its own thing, you do have a degree of you get that cultural separation, and you get the Bomber Command that stands up out of it, and the Bomber Mafia, which dominates the British aerospace industry by means of controlling British aerospace procurement. Does that still happen here? Because notionally those people still exist, but do they have the same influence? Like, how have we gotten to this point where not only is the Fleet Air Arm kept as its own separate thing, but also the RAF isn't formed until the same time the United States Air Force is formed? It's problematic.
Is he working under the assumption the Flying Corps is going to end up being how the U.S. Army Air Corps worked?
That's not gonna... Yeah, that's...
But will it even? Because especially in the run-up to World War II, the Army Air Force was increasingly becoming its own branch.
This is the thing.
Thank you, Arnold.
The process that takes the US AAF and some other air forces the interwar period to do, basically because of the way in which those forces are involved with World War One and the way in which their armed structures are set up, because of the way the British are involved in World War One, and because of the way the Royal Flying Corps and the Royal Naval Air Service spring up, and the way in which they're managed, unless you fundamentally break the Royal Naval Air Service and the Royal Flying Corps, there's basically no way to stop them running through that track to branch independence during the First World War. Because of the way in which the structures are set up, the way in which the independence of the officers and men within the branch grows up, the way in which it's backed by some figures of the establishment as well, that this independence is cultivated.
And on top of that, the British Army Air Force is largely formed from cavalry personnel and from the cavalry and the culture of the cavalry, who are already at this point pretty much autonomous on the local and the tactical level from what you'd think of as the British Army.
Yeah, they've basically...
So the Air Corps already coming from a position of autonomy.
Because bear in mind, the cavalry well, yes, there was still that spirit of elan and cavalry charges. The cavalry in the British Army by the outbreak of World War One was supposed to act as an independent mounted infantry force. So its mobility, its independence was its primary weapon. That was that spirit was cultivated. The whole thing with the cavalry is that it would get into a position where it could be useful, and then if the conditions were right, which it was considered would be rare, they would conduct a mounted attack. But more likely, and something they did train for, and there's a reason why they exchanged their carbines for full-length rifles, they would dismount once in position and fight as a regular dismounted infantry force.
Take into account that the British Army cavalry, for the most part, fight like dragoons, where their job is, like the Australians at Toshiba, you use your factor cavalry to get to a place like a hill or Toshiba the Wells, and you get a couple of machine guns there to stop the enemy taking it from you, to get time for the infantry to get in.
Yeah, this is the thing. This is the thing that people forget about cavalry in this era of industrialized warfare, and even up to World War II. By the time you get past the beginning of the beginning of the 20th century, I know this is a tangent, but I'm enjoying it. And Foxo is with me on this one. We seem to be on the same wavelength. By the time you get to the 1900s and the run up to World War One and the period after it, because cavalry is still relevant in that period, you need to transition from thinking about them like cavalry and think of them instead as a mounted mobile force of regular infantry. They're not cavalry in the swords charging. They can be, but they have a more but they have this other role that you need to bear in mind. They are both, as Foxo says. You have to bear in mind that other part of them. That they can be, they expect to be independent mounted infantry that can, will, and are prepared to fight dismounted.
It's simple. Yeah. They're not your Napoleonic cavalry. They're your dragoons.
No, yeah, they're not even dragoons at that point. It's like it's moved beyond that.
They're like dragoons. I think they'll call the Royal Dragoons.
Based on your description, and I'm probably going to make a certain army colonel cringe when I say this, they are almost a proto-mechanized infantry.
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
I mean, yeah, but that's what dragoons basically evolve into.
Yeah, this is where you see the transition to that form of infantry. This is the beginnings of it. Ruron, you are literally correct.
Cavalries are breakthrough infantry.
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah, Ruron, you are literally correct. You're exactly right. Like that's not even an
electrician. This was never in doubt.
That's not even an analogy, Ruinon. You phrased it as an analogy, but no, you're literally right. That's literally what's happening.
Yeah, but it's also important. But it's also important to not take away from the fact they did also largely, like the Aussies at Toshiba, they also could and did fight like traditional cavalry.
Oh yes, absolutely. This is something important.
Unprepared infantry that are marching versus cavalry charge, even in the age of machine gun. That's the cavalry's fight to lose.
Yeah, the machine gun's no good if it ain't set up.
Yes.
And while modern bolt action rifles can be very dangerous to cavalry, the problem is they're dangerous if the infantry is, prepared and expecting you. If they're marching and their weapons aren't in a position to really be brought to aim quickly, if you appear and the gap is like 10 seconds, that ain't enough time.
Yeah.
There's also the psychological aspect of having a horse cavalry charging you.
Mm.
Yeah. And you're in close formation and you can't effectively move away from
people.
Because it's like, just going a little bit even further to our tangent, there's a really annoying idea in especially medieval history that the pike and the spear counter cavalry. They don't. The pike doesn't counter cavalry, the formation counters cavalry. Anything you think of as if it's out of position or it's taken by surprise through a shock maneuver, will get slaughtered by cavalry. Because it's sort of like, to use a modern analogy, it's like let's say you've got a Glock, and your opponent from a rival gang rolls up in a BMW and just west sides you. I don't know where I'm going with this. Anyway, next question.
A more modern interpretation would be, yes, a modern MBT will stop an RPG in the front. It will not stop it in the back.
I was all with the Bradley's taking on that T80. A T80 in position and supported will quite happily eat out the entire flotilla of Bradleys. When out of position, that can be flanked.
Fubbernucked.
Putt.
Okay, quick question. Are centaurs cavalry or infantry?
By definition,
Heavy shock
cavalry.
infantry.
They can.
You could technically call them heavy shock infantry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
honestly, because it's one of those things where they're not. The reason I would lean more towards Moe and saying heavy shock infantry is because there's a difference between a good rider and a good horse and actually, being the horse and having direct control over that body. It gives a level of difference which turns them from cavalry into heavy shock infantry, which, while technically it does the same thing, the level of control is just that much more. So the centaur acts more like an infantryman rather than a cavalry horse and rider, even if they are performing the duty of cavalry.
I'd argue it's the other way around. Because a centaur is going to have the same vulnerabilities due to their size and their length as cavalry. We're talking about centaurs, so they're the horse lower half, aren't they? So they're still going to have space issues. They're going to not want to stick around and fight. They want to go through and out.
Against a human target, at least.
Against infantry, yes. They're going to fight like cavalry. They've got the form of cavalry. They're going to have the logistical demand of cavalry. They're cavalry.
On the other hand, a centaur could technically carry a wall shield.
Yes. But so did cataphracts. And cataphracts are cavalry.
Right, okay.
A wall shield is bigger.
Right, okay, folks.
So,
We have
Moving
diverted.
on.
We have diverted a little bit down a tangent.
all I'll say, Moe, is 11.
Stop it.
Armored Byzantine
Funny joke.
Stop
fighting
it.
in Bulgaria.
We'll talk about this later.
But anyway, to just round off, to bring us back to the question and finish off, basically, you fundamentally can't deal with this scenario given the way in which World War I develops for the Royal Flying Corps and the Royal Naval Air Service. And even if even if you somehow do, you're gonna need to give us, like we've said a few times now, a lot of specifics on the how for us to even begin to approach the early interwar period. But yeah, moving on. Typical gunnery officer. Opinions on the Anglo-French variable geometry multi-role aircraft project. Do you think it's a peer or a comparison to the F-111 in terms of rolling capabilities? And do you think the aircraft is put into production the Tornado program wouldn't have happened? That Anglo-French variable geometry multi-role aircraft project.
Well, since you have to look it up, allow me
British
to help.
Aircraft Corporation's Assault AFG canceled.
Yeah.
So here's the picture of
I'm looking at that.
AFVG.
Yeah, I'm looking at that, and that looks, walks, and talks like a bloody tornado.
Oh god,
It's
that's a bad
literally
picture.
a part of the project that leads to the Tornado project.
Yes,
It's the French dropping out of this, which gives you the Tornado.
So basically,
I mean, quote unquote. My opinion is that the Tornado already exists. Britain was just finding someone to pay for it.
So basically, this is
And the Germans were like, Yeah, we'll pay for it.
So basically, we just get earlier Tornado, basically. Maybe not exactly the same, but
You get Tornado, but worse.
yeah.
Well, you
earlier
also get
worse
tornado, but carrier capable.
Exactly.
That will be hysterical. Those things on the Clemons, which might. Oh my
And
god.
so, it shall exist. And I would like to induct a new saint into the Church of the Tornado,
Oh fuck.
the French Sea Tornado,
Which of course.
also known as the BAC Dassault FAFVG,
There's also the most horrific
circa
thing.
1967.
There's also the most
Foxo, I'm
horrific.
with you.
There's also the most horrific thing here that Foxo is missing, and I'm waiting for her to see it.
Foxo,
Foxo,
Domine.
Foxo. Just engage
Just
brain
say
for
it.
a second. This is
Just say it.
this is the 60s and the 70s. Who also has Catabar carriers still at this point?
Oh god.
It's not just the French. But I don't think. But joking aside, I don't think it would fit on the current existing stock of British carriers at that point. Although, given
It would.
when it's proposed, oh my.
Has he noticed?
If this aircraft is adopted, that might be enough to save CVA-01.
It will be.
No, you don't need bigger British carriers than CVA-01. CVA-01 is basically the carrier that Britain probably needs. It's about the right size. It's not overbuilt. And because of the size of it, it can be serviced at multiple dockyards across Britain and its allies. That's
It's
something
almost like these two projects were related, Fleet.
What can I say?
It's
All
almost
this-
like when the British were looking at getting new carriers in CVA-01, they were also looking at aircraft for it.
Like
That's
I
why-
say, all this would have came into fruition if the pound didn't have to be devalued.
I don't think the pound being devalued would have...
Dude, the pound being devalued cost the entire project to went completely tits up.
Yeah, because the French kicked off because it massively spiked the relative amount of money they were putting into it.
It also killed the RAF acquiring aardvarks.
For good reason. Because the RAF wasn't so much wanting aardvarks as they were getting molested by the USAF to buy the aardvark.
Yeah, but also for what Britain needs, TSR-2 would have been better for what Britain
No,
needed.
do not bring
No.
up the cursed.
Dude, they dropped TSR-2 for aardvark.
What a horrible idea.
And then they brought the
I know.
aardvark for Buccaneer, so...
Okay, Bone Meal Boy asks, oh, hang on, we already did this. It's just what happens to the RFC if the RF never comes into existence. We did this.
They're related.
Yeah, we
Moving on.
We literally did that. We answered what happens to the RFC. Like, we covered that. Brandon Larson, what is the final's thoughts on The Martian and Project Hail Mary? Please tell me somebody more up with
I'm a fucking
film.
pirate.
It's a book.
A motherfucking pirate. Yes, I am.
What the
I don't. Have you read? Well, I'm presuming you haven't read Project Hail Mary.
I
no.
am vaguely aware of The Martian, but I have never heard of Project Hail Mary.
Let's just put it this way. The U.S. government has, over many, many years, spent a tremendous amount of money to bring Matt Damon home.
Mm-hmm.
The
Well, that's
Martian
The Martian.
is the most expensive endeavor to bring Matt Damon home yet.
Don't worry. Project Hail Mary will be adapted into a live-action series by Amazon. Comes out next year.
Will it be about bringing Matt Damon home from an extrasolar settlement?
Based on the look, it's not Matt Damon this time. It's Ryan Gosling.
Oh, good. We get to
Oh.
waste taxpayer dollars bringing another Hollywood playboy home.
No, you don't understand. They're bringing the heartthrob home. Guys, I like my older men, but Matt Damon.
Anyway,
Well, don't worry. Leonardo DiCaprio will still be interested in you.
No, because he
Anyway.
doesn't have that square forehead that makes him Matt Damon. Like, I'm sorry, does Matt Damon's forehead look like you should have like a billboard style poster, just like your advert here?
Anyway,
Yes.
we now have a slew of questions from your typical gunnery officer. Let me just triple check to make sure that I did.
Well,
get
technically, Fleet hasn't
Christ,
given
it's
his
Jason
thought
Bourne.
on the Martian.
because he has no thoughts, head empty.
Well,
Pardon me?
we should
uh,
force him to have a thought.
The only thing that's going on in Fleet's heads right now is just Hosh on a turntable.
Really? I thought he had met Jason Bourne.
Jesus Christ, it's Jason. Typical officer.
Jason Bourne. All right,
Oh god, does anyone here remember 24?
that's ancient.
Yeah,
typical,
Jason Bourne being
Just as I was entering the
No,
workforce,
no, no.
according to Foxo.
typical gunnery. Fuck. Okay, seriously. Dragon, Foxo, Ruinon. I don't care if you guys want to bash each other with word shivs over age anywhere else. Not on my show. Your typical gunnery officer.
sounds like
Opinions
something a
on the-
peasant would say.
Now listen here, you
Also,
little...
come on.
Little... Typical gunnery officer. Opinions on the post-World War II Italian cruiser with the Polaris sub-launched ballistic missiles. Do you think it's a giant target for the enemy and not a viable launching platform? Yes, it is a giant target for the enemy. It was possible to launch them from a surface platform, so it is a viable launching platform, but putting ballistic missiles on surface ships when SSBNs or SSBs exist as concepts that you can build is just a non-starter.
We're talking about Giuseppe Garibaldi.
Yes.
As a ship.
A surface ship with ballistic missiles is a asset you use to clearly signal and nothing else. It also means that a ship carrying them has no ambiguity that it is carrying nuclear weapons and has to be treated radically differently by the navy that operates it and the other powers who have to deal with it.
I will point out, for those who don't know, Giuseppe Garibaldi never received those Polaris missiles.
No.
Never.
I thought none of them ever received their missiles.
No, none of them did. Basically down
Yeah.
to the fact that A, the US was a bit hesitant to give them over, and B, the Italians realised, wait, we're in NATO? If we need deterrence in the Eastern Mediterranean, we're under the new US nuclear umbrella, but you just get, hey, US, you know that massive fleet of SSBNs you're building? Can we ask that one of those be deployed in the Eastern Mediterranean?
Well, I mean, I will say, work on her started in like the late 50s.
Oh, yeah, like... Yeah, but then I'm saying this is the reason why she never got her missiles and the whole project was abandoned. By the time
That's why she didn't get them later on. Originally, the Americans were just literally dragging their feet because they didn't really want to give the Italian Navy access to this, at the time, radically new delivery system for nuclear-based weapon systems.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly with the fact that this was, a few years after the Soviets got the bomb?
Well, okay.
And so that would have been seen as a radical escalation of force.
Yeah.
I do have to wonder, who were the Italians trying to deter?
A mix of the regional navies or powers, such as Egypt, with how it was going at the time. Bearing in mind, I believe that this is also, the decade after the Suez Crisis.
Yeah. there's also the caveat that they needed a deterrent against the weapons of mass destruction Albania was stockpiling. Because, yes, while they weren't nuclear, the stockpile of
Albania had a shit of chemical weapons.
Yeah, the stockpile of chemical and rumored biological weapons the Albanians were stockpiling was enough of a threat to make the Italians go, we do want something that just makes them go no beyond conventional deterrence.
There was also the idea of, if push came to shove and they got access to them, removing them from the face of the planet in a devastating first strike, should the worst come to pass.
Yeah.
That's kind of it. Having them to threaten the shit out of a very communist-leaning Middle Eastern state power would also have been very useful. They never got them for that. But again, would have been useful. I don't doubt that the Italians would have held off until getting authorization from the United States before escalating to nuclear deployments.
Yeah.
Considering how close they were with NATO at the time. But at the same time, having that would have then delineated that, Russia now feels forced to designate more forces for the Mediterranean.
You might have even seen some Golf class, once they're rebuilt, some Golf class SSBs move to the Black Sea, because once they're rebuilt to do submerged launch, their missiles would have the reach from the Black Sea to hit Italy.
I would say that, just to address the question more directly, yes, this cruiser is a giant target. It's target number one for the enemy. And as far as if you're talking a viable launching platform, as in, can it get the missile into flight? Yeah, why not? It works. Cool.
Yeah, for the thing about a viable platform.
Hang on, hold.
Absolutely.
Ruinon has the sticky bit.
If you're talking about a viable launch platform as a deterrent, i.e., is it a viable deterrent?
No.
I mean, it's about as viable as any fixed in place nuclear stockpile is going to be, because it's as viable a launch platform in that regards as missile silos and bomb magazines. It is not viable as a second strike deterrent.
No.
Yeah, when it comes down to it, to tag onto that, as a viable platform for actually launching a weapon system, yeah. Fun fact, despite being rebuilt and adding, a few thousand tons of top weight, Giuseppe Garibaldi was still incredibly sea capable. She was very stable as a platform. That's one of the reasons she retained so many quick-firing anti-aircraft weaponry, and the way that they were geared up, they were positioned in such a way that they were given a ludicrously good, stable firing platform to fire from. Missiles are much less picky about that kind of thing, unless you build your missile to be paper fitting into a folder type silo design, so you don't have enough space for it to potentially maneuver doing a roll or something. When it comes to deterrent factor, I mean, it's as big as a deterrent as an SSBN at the time. Everything is fragile. You cannot future-proof or make something that is completely immune without everyone else being like, damn, guess we better start building that. Or a case of, this is still, by the time she recommissions in, 63?
The biggest thing is she can't hide. And that's why I say her value as a second strike deterrent is limited.
I mean, sure, but this is still a reasonably fast, reasonably agile cruiser in, admittedly, an enclosed space. The Mediterranean is not, small by any means, but it's not, the open ocean. You will stumble upon her at some point.
I gotta
but how quickly you stumble upon her is very much determined in how quickly you know her location at a given time. If you know she was at this place 2 days ago, reasonably you can gauge how far she can get in 2 days at even maximum acceleration. But at the same time, you're not there at that time. You can't sink her right now. She can still launch her missiles at that time. As a second strike, depends.
She'll be being tailed by a sub at all times. If she, like, in this hypothetical, if she is an armed asset with nuclear weapons, she will have a tail.
She will have a tail, whether that's a submarine, a small like spy plane,
Or a
I
Russian.
wouldn't put it past the Russians to put up to specifically intend a specific type of aircraft to be refitted purely to keep an eye on her, because she is at that time become the single most devastating threat in the Mediterranean Sea.
The Russians have boats in the Med they can use. It'll be a sub. They have boats. They have nukes. They have nuke boats in the Med they can use. And honestly, that is worth tasking one of them to that job.
Yeah, I mean, it's again like for a first strike, she could probably get her missiles off before she dies.
Yeah. The next question I know very little about beyond the basics, so I'm going to let everyone else have a crack at that. Tipogami Officer asks, question 7, opinion on the anti-tank dogs during World War II. Do you think it's a waste of dog lives and the dogs were usually running back towards the owners and blowing them apart instead of the enemy? Right, have a crack at that. I know nothing.
So,
Yes,
fun fact.
moving on.
Fun fact. This is particularly a Russian thing. During Operation Barbarossa, the Russians were lacking in numerous things: manpower at a point, weapons, ammunition, food, clothing, fuel. What they did have was a growing collection of part rabid and well-trained dogs, both military trained and domestically trained, in almost fecundal supplies. What they did was quite ingenious at the time, is they would train these dogs to run at enemy tanks, because the Germans used attack dogs relatively frequently, not as part of their frontline forces because that would be silly, but to hold down areas they would use guard dogs. They would have the venerable shepherd dog that had been effectively rebred in German hands to be an attack dog and guard dog. So the Germans were actually very hesitant to just shoot down dogs because they didn't know 9 times out of 10 if it was one of theirs or not, particularly in like the evening. So the Russians thought, let's just strap some AT weapons, like large amounts of explosives or an AT mine to a dog, have it run underneath an enemy tank, and then either remote or time detonate them. It was a good idea. The issue was the Russians had no German tanks to train them on, so they typically trained them on their own, which meant that when first, second, and third deployment times started during the pullback to Moscow, the Russian dogs were told, go, kill those tanks. So they'd run out, look for the tanks, and run to the tanks they'd been trained on, the T-34-57s. That's where that whole legend stuff comes from. It was not as widespread as people like to claim. It did definitely happen. But at a certain point, the Russians either, one, stopped doing it because they realized that this is a waste of time and effort. 2, the Germans are moving so fast that they're actually bypassing most of the units we've assigned to do this, making it a waste of time and effort. So let's just plant mines in their path or along their established supply roads and bury them slightly so they're very unobtrusive, and when the next thing drives over, it explodes. And 3, they were running out of food. There are some stories about units that were left behind effectively using their dogs as rations.
New dog models. Brand new dog models.
Good point. But
it was not really a happy time for them.
No.
This was, Barbarossa withdrawal.
It was also the idea of anti-tank dogs falls under has one fundamental flaw. And that's the psychology of the dog. Because dogs don't like loud bangs, they don't like big things moving. And when they panic, their first instinct, often only instinct, is to run back to their owner or their trainer. Which means that even police and military dogs today, with modern training, still do it. So it's a flawed concept from the start, even with the flawed training methods. Because
As-
dog psychology no work like that.
That's why the modern version is drones.
as a general concept of take theoretically trainable animal, attach it to explosive payload, and use the essentially servitorize it so that it is the guidance system for that explosive payload. It is not particularly unique in World War II. Every nation was doing it. The U.S. did the Bat Bomb, for instance. I think was the U.S. or somebody else had a pigeon guided glide weapon.
That's British.
That was British. Okay. So it's mainly the training, and that would make it a waste. But once you take the emotional component of a dog is a companion animal out, it's not really that unique among World War II powers. It really isn't.
And it's also, dogs are a really bad basis to do that sort of servitized weapon from.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons that there were very few like actual instances of them being effectively used, was because they're still dogs.
Yeah.
Your typical. Oh god, this is a. Oh my god, this is a gunnery officer dump. Apart from one at the end from YouTube Minecraft Watcher.
I'm sorry, Nate.
Oh.
That's what was left.
It's alright, it's fine. YouTube Gunnery Officer, what is your opinion on the Schickville torpedo and its high speed? Do you think its ability is limited by the range and homing capabilities? Do you think the West has any tactics to avoid or counter the Schickville? Well, first of all, let me address the last part of it first. You don't really need specialist tactics to counter it or avoid it because of what it is. The Schickville is a super cavitating, basically almost point defense weapon for a submarine. And by that I mean, before I get jumped on, it's basically a, oh shit, we've been engaged by something, what's the line of bearing? Right, match bearings and shoot. And send that thing rocketing off down that line of bearing and hope that it makes whatever it is down that line of bearing go away. That's the point of it. It's not, because of its limited range and its lack of things like sonar-driven homing that most modern heavyweight guided torpedoes use, its lack of endurance, it is not an offensive weapon. It is a point defense weapon for the submarine that carries it. Even its enhanced ranged version still doesn't really have the reach you would want to use it against... to use it offensively.
Yeah, it is going to be deaf/blind underwater.
Mm-hmm.
And it does not appear to be wire guided.
Nope, it ain't.
Which means it's a dumb weapon.
It's not a dumb weapon. It does have some guidance within it.
It has gyros. It has make this course in depth guidance.
Yeah.
I.e. Mark 14 guidance. I.e. dumb guidance. It's for a torpedo. It's a dumb weapon.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the
No, I know. Yeah.
ability. I'm just saying this for the benefit of everybody who isn't you. I mean that in the ability, in the sense of it is not. There is no active homing. There is no ability to see its surroundings and assess and locate and track targets.
The missile does not know where it is.
This
particular missile
literally does not know where it is. And it does not know where it was, so it cannot subtract where it was from where it is to figure out where it is. To figure out where it isn't, or however that shit post goes.
It's basically a, oh shit, that's something coming, fuck, dodge.
And maybe they did, but if the British, or if the Soviet Union, now Russian Federation, had essentially a submarine that was ignored the bow sonar and just said, how many torpedo tubes can we fit here? It could be a very devastating weapon.
I mean, the funny thing is,
squadrons surface assets, but
The problem with, thing is, if you look at some of the tube arrangements on certain Russian subs, in particular the Akulas, their bow is basically just, torpedoes. It's kind of silly. With Yasen, they've kind of reined it back in a bit, but yeah, it could be a potential threat. But again, as Cedar says, because of the time on target, you can see why you'd use it. You hear someone flooding tubes, and you hear a launch transient. You snap a shot back down that line of bearing. The evasive maneuvers that target is going to have to do to evade guarantees that if it is guiding a torpedo in via wire, it is going to lose the wire on that weapon. And at that point, your chances of evading their shot go up exponentially.
yeah. Well, also too, this torpedo is going to deafen everyone that doesn't have. It's going to deafen everyone between it and the submarine.
It basically
between the submarine and its target. It's going to have a.
With both sides
Even if you had-
maneuvering and the sound of the Shikvol, both sides ramping up to avoid the shots they've both fired, it's basically resetting the battle or the engagement back to both subs don't know where the other is. They know there's a sub out there. Restart the acquisition and procedure with passive sonar. It's basically a hard reset of that engagement.
And it's at its best.
It's going to depend greatly on when this engagement is occurring, because unlike the Shikvol, or however you say that,
That's about right.
the Spearfish Mark 48 Western torpedoes are able to seek and home.
They are.
So, realistically, an Akula might, but most Warsaw Pact submarines are not going to be able to open the datum enough.
The thing with this torpedo is it's only carried by nuke boats, aka boats with the ability to make use of the advantage it gives. It's not carried by Russian kilos, I think. They've sold it to nations that have kilos to use it on them, but as far as I'm aware, in Russian service, it's only carried by nuclear submarines.
Okay, but then you're going to be in Akula doing 40 plus knots and making a ton of sound anyway.
But in theory, so is your opponent. Obviously, theory and practice are two different things, but you've both fired shots down the line of bearing. You both need to evade.
So basically, it's a useful tool as long as you can get the enemy to flinch.
Basically,
Pretty much.
yeah.
And given how deaf the Soviets are, and I mean that in the sense of their sonar for the longest time until a certain FBI agent decides to turn his coat. Fuck that guy. The Russian sonar is not as acute as they think it is, so they don't quite realize how noisy they are. And they've got to be able to hear.
Be the case.
I said that used to be the case.
Oh,
Yes,
I missed that bit. I missed that. That did not transmit
I didn't
to me.
explicitly say the words that used to be the case, but seeing as how we tend to do history, I am doing this at the looking back towards the more towards the introduction than the current date.
But yeah, go on.
There's no guarantee that the Pact submarine is going to have an accurate bead on where the Los Angeles or the Sturgeon or the very early Virginia is. They could send this torpedo out 15 degrees off of where they think off of where that the NATO submarine actually is. Which, depending on the
it all depends. So its usefulness does depend on can the Soviet sub make its attacker flinch.
I would
if it doesn't make the attacker flinch, let me the torpedo will have been pretty much useless
Um,
because again, the weapons that are targeting will score home.
what I would like to say is
Can I
that
finish?
you thought you had, but go on.
But it's useful because if you can get the target to flinch with weapons of the time, it can allow you to break contact and reset the engagement when you're in a negative position.
Ruinon, what I would say is they might not hear the submarine at first, but one thing that even the Russians will hear in that period is the very clearly audible sound of tubes being flooded and launch
I don't
transients.
think don't get me wrong. I don't think they're not going to hear the transients.
That is enough.
I'm just saying. Would you let me finish, please?
Sorry, go on.
I'm just saying that they may not get a accurate bearing on the transients.
I find that hard
Yeah.
to believe.
Well, think about it. If you flood the tubes, you've got a fixed point where the submarine was. If you assume the enemy submarine is moving, you have a cone of you have a super possibility cone of where that submarine could be if it's moving at X knots for X time period.
Well, yes, that's true.
So, which means that even if you have the perfect hydrophones and you've still got a large circular area probable to hit.
You're not. Your thing is that is all true, but as long as you have a line of bearing to that sound, you just shoot down that line of bearing, and that is enough.
Yes, but my point...
At that point, there is a torpedo coming down that line of bearing, and that American boat, if its captain is any form of competent, will not go, oh, it's a Shikvul, it's not guided, it's not going to be a... No, he's going to clear datum. And also, to be fair, after firing NATO boats, clear datum anyway.
My point is that you need... your biggest asset to localizing sonar contact is being able to monitor the contact's emissions over time, because water does really weird things to sound, and you can occasionally it will bounce in such a way that it sounds on initial locus like it's really close or really far away, but as you listen more, you find that it's a range different than what you initially thought. And my argument is that the Soviet, particularly, sonar systems are, for lack of it, I don't want to call them dumb. I'm just going to continue to use the word deaf, are deaf enough where it takes them longer to get the same fix on a target versus NATO systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as a result, from the momentary loss transient they're going to receive, they may not get an accurate fix and therefore may send the torpedo on a completely cuckoo bearing. And there's going to be a significant difference in the impact on the NATO submarine from let's get from where the enemy knows we are, i.e. from where we launched the torpedo tube, and oh crap, enemy, torpedo in the water, flank, get us off of this line immediately so we don't get hit by it.
That's not if a sound happens on a bearing, there isn't underwater, that's the bearing that sound comes from. You might get differences in where you think the sound is in terms of distance down that bearing, but you won't get a different bearing to that sound. That's just not how that works.
Yeah, it can.
Even in atmosphere fleet, you're wrong.
Yeah, because put it simply, the ocean has thermal layers. and sounds will change asymmetrically when they change between mediums and medium temperatures.
Yeah, the speed of sound in water is not consistent. So it is actually conceivable for you to get a reflection of a noise off of something, thermal layer, uh, seafloor terrain, whatever, depending upon the explicit conditions that you're in, before you get the sound from the source. It's water just screws with so many things. It's almost comical. There's a reason why sonar systems are so navies are so paranoid over the security on them, because they take so much research and development to make. It's not as simple as you would think it would be. And especially for, I don't know if the US has ever mirrored anything like Perisher and just isn't as public about it, but you're not going to, I highly doubt that for most NATO nations, the standard practice is launch torpedo, go to flank in an opposite direction. It's going to be break your bearing, yeah, okay, but it's probably going to be a don't go to flank unless you have something on a bearing to you. And this torpedo is going to be making so much noise that it will be far easier to fix its heading and relative bearing for the NATO sub to be able to determine, are we in this thing's threat cone or not? And if we're not, then we can operate as normally and we don't have to flinch.
In the modern era, I'll absolutely agree with that. In the Cold War era, there is unfortunately one caveat to this whole problem, which I think during the Cold War basically forces a NATO sub to move if shipwell's fired at or near it. Which is the fact that, as originally designed, the weapon was nuclear.
Yeah.
Which basically means...
Which means there's no point dodging.
Yeah, there's the loss. Okay,
That's
at least with
not-
the publicly stated
Oh,
speed of Los Angeles class boat, you are never going to get, even I don't think an Akula would, if a nuclear tipped shipwell was fired at an Akula, you are never going to get enough space on that one to survive.
I mean,
we are
Akula-
referring to the VA 111 Shikval here, right?
Yeah, the Akula and the Los Angeles have equivalent speeds. Ruinon. They're fairly close in top speed regimen.
Oh.
Are you
Alpha.
thinking of Alpha?
I'm thinking of Alpha.
You are thinking of Alpha.
Akula's the newer one that's slightly more sane.
Akula's the boat that saw the Russian Navy out of the Cold War and still remains a valuable part of their SSN fleet. It's the boat that led to Yasen.
Yeah. Akula's the newer one that's slightly more sane. My bad. Just take the where I said Akula earlier and just
I do
replace that
feel
with Alpha.
Dragon, you were gonna say something? You go on.
No, I'm just making sure we're definitely talking about the right torpedo because
Yeah, VA.
we're still not entirely too sure about that whole nuclear bit. We think it might have been potentially, but we don't know. It's a weapon.
The
we have
warhead
so-
housing is big enough to hold a nuclear weapon. The issue is, with the miniaturization of nuclear weapons, there's quite a lot of torpedoes that can now hold nuclear warheads.
Yes.
Well, yeah. Apparently, so from what we believe, the original design was using a nuclear warhead, but but as far as we're aware, no torpedoes were ever built with the warhead, and it's like,
Right. Okay. We're coming up on 40 minutes from 3 hours. So if the panel doesn't mind, I'd like to try and really, as best we can, pick up the pace a little bit.
No simple answers.
And to be fair, a lot of these questions, a lot of these questions, despite being long, are fairly open and shut. Apart from maybe one. Typical Gunnery Officer asks, do you think the US Navy aviators after 1942 were better trained and more prepared for combat than any other naval aviators in the world at the time, since they trained extensively for deflection shooting, BFM, and also with the 2 converted Great Lakes steamers as carriers? These aviators have more carrier takeoffs and landings experience than any other aviators. No, they were not significantly better than their peers.
They
Fleet
can't
Air
fly
Arm
at
would
night.
like a word.
The Japanese Navy would like a word.
Better trained.
They can't fly at night.
Yeah, no.
Like,
Like I'm sorry, better trained and more prepared for combat. No, what the USN has is a robust program to train out, on average, more prepared aircraft in terms of more prepared pilots in terms of robustness for combat. Than
Yeah, but that's what this question was asking.
no, not like that. No, when I said more as in they could turn out more pilots overall. They weren't necessarily better trained or more prepared for combat than, let's say, the British were.
If Gunnery Officer is phrasing this question as if Ensign Joe, Royal Navy Edition, and Ensign Jack, USN Edition, show up at their carriers in 1942, I'm still going to give it to the Royal Navy Ensign because the Royal Navy Ensign likely has some night flying under his belt.
It'll be night flying, and the fact that there's a much higher chance the Fleet Air Arm pilot has been bloodied.
And also, let's not forget,
And seeing combat fly is well, there's few things that train like combat flying.
Foxo, remember, this is Ensign fresh out of Flight Academy.
And also,
yeah.
but
hence why
there is also a variation on Foxo's question, which is
can I clarify?
Trying to
I don't
help.
just mean the pilot blooded. I mean, there's a good chance their trainers are blooded.
That's what I was going to say.
Their doctrine's based off. They have learned lessons, a lot more lessons for a lot longer from actual combat flying.
Yeah,
The
so
training's built on real world experience.
Yeah, so basically,
Yeah.
Instead of Private Jack in the US will have been told by his aviators, this is what we think enemy aircraft are capable of, and this is the doctrine we think you guys should use. Whereas Seaman Ensign Joe in the Royal Navy will have had one gruff son of a bitch come and say, I tangled with bloody 109s over Norway. Here's what I learned on how to not die.
Yeah. And because it's one of the big strengths of the US Navy in 43 and 44 is the combat knowledge from 41 and 42 goes back into the training system. By 42, it hasn't returned. That backfill hasn't happened.
Yeah. Typical Officer, what if the USN had 4 Bow-class CVEs at the beginning of the landings of Guadalcanal and neighbouring islands? They'd be escorted by at least 6 destroyers and will be stationed just east of where the transport ships are, while Fletcher's carriers are tasked to counter any major naval force. Do you think these CVEs will be able to provide adequate cover for the transports and also escort for the Marines? Yes, that's a really easy part of the question. That's just a flat-out yes. And do you think they would survive Mikawa's onslaught at night, and would Fletcher withdraw his carriers like IRL? So,
no.
In regards to surviving Mikawa's onslaught at night, it's going to depend entirely on if he knows they're there. If he knows they're there, they will be priority targets. If
they're converted merchantmen, right?
Yeah.
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 But their silhouette is very clear. The problem is it's not so much during the battle itself. It's before the battle starts. Does he know they're there, or does he think it's a landing force supported by surface assets? If he doesn't know they're there, he will stick exactly to the plan he historically did. He will engage the cruisers and withdraw, because at night the silhouette of those ships will not be clearly carriers. Not in the engagement they're fighting. He will engage and withdraw. If he knows they're there, however, he will do a variation of what we discussed on Monday that Foxo and Dragon eventually rallied me round to after me digging my heels in for a bit. he will drive through the cruiser line to get at the light carriers, sink them, as many of the transports as possible, and then, without stopping, leave the area on a wide arc and withdraw.
Yeah, and try and sink as many cruisers as he can.
Yeah. Either way, regardless of what happens, Fletcher will still withdraw his carriers.
Yeah.
Because the
and the boats can't really affect the battle itself.
No. Regardless of what happens during the battle, even if the Bogues survive, Fletcher will still withdraw his carriers. If they don't survive, he will still withdraw his carriers.
And realistically, he'll probably still pull those carriers out of Iron Bottom Sound at night.
Yeah, there's no reason those CV... Also, there's no reason those CVs, even in daylight, would be nearly that close to the landing beaches. There's no point.
Yeah.
Well, they're being used as transports.
But they wouldn't be. The whole thing with the Bogue CVs is they don't have any space for cargo. That whole space, that's their hangar.
It's called the hangar.
Yeah, but then you don't carry aircraft.
Yeah, but you could say take half the air wing.
But why? Why would you?
They don't have enough to get... There is not that much space on the boat.
Yeah, there's no... Why? Why would you... No, Foxo, just abandon
the
this.
Americans could do what the Japanese did with their battle carriers.
What? We will hold on.
Right.
That's not... What are you talking about?
No.
Right. Here's a point. The Bogue can carry between 19 and 24 planes, depending on which planes. You can reasonably cut this down to, say, carrying 12 and have reasonable cargo space.
But
now, you are going to massively limit its
just
capability.
stupid.
You're going to limit its capability, but it depends what you're wanting them for.
That's just... Send another
I
merchant
mean, the question
ship.
says is there to cover the landings.
Yeah, just send another merchant ship. Don't use your... Because...
I would
even
agree,
though-
but it is doable.
It's doable, but I'm sat there with my head in my hands, cutting my own head off, going, why?
No, it's not something they would do, especially the fact that they have 4 boats.
The thing is, I don't.
And honestly,
To be
politely...
honest, if they have 4 Bogues kicking around in the time frame of the battle for Guadalcanal, I would not have them at Guadalcanal. I would have them doing what they were built to do, which is, I don't know, escorting merchant convoys.
In the Atlantic.
But if they're there,
Also, I don't think...
God help them if they start taking surface fire, because they are not going to survive.
No.
No.
But also,
It's simple
I
as
think,
this. There's only one reason 4 boats is in Guadalcanal, and it is there to unload its air wing onto Henderson Field. That's it.
Yeah, and that was going to be my thing, which also adds to my thing. If they are there, in addition to their own air wings, they'll probably be carrying in every spare space flat-pack aircraft, so they can still retain some of their air wings when they withdraw.
No. They're dumping everything and then running the fuck away.
But also-
You're not carrying anything extra on the boat. It's everything it has listed as flyable on the carrier, and that's it.
At this stage of the game, you do not want to assemble aircraft on Henderson Field. It is no. That's just no. That's how you.
They will get
aircraft
bombed and
on
shelled.
Here's the question: what are these Bogues even equipped with?
At that point, it
Nothing.
would be... at that point, it would be...
Yes.
It would probably...
Buckets, Dauntless,
I mean, if they're really unlucky...
if you're talking about planes.
I mean, if they're really unlucky, they might even have they might even have F2A cast-offs if we're talking this early in the war. With all the F4Fs being concentrated
No.
on.
Mid-4.
They're not sending F2As.
No. In mid-42s, they're not that desperate.
They might put F2As in the Atlantic for search. They might. They're not putting them in the Pacific.
Yeah, so honestly, given they're going to Henderson Field, it'll be F4F and SBD. Just pack them with as many as possible and get them there.
Pretty
Literally wait for the go-ahead from, the Marines. We've captured Henderson Field, and then you fly them off. And
To be fair, it is going to be 100% Marine squadrons.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so there you are. Typical officer. What if John Garand instead went to his countryman Canada with the M1 Garand design instead of the US Springfield Armory? Would the Canadians have Garands in World War II as their standard rifle? And would the US be weaker than IRL with the bolt action Springfield as their standard rifle?
No.
As we have said, and we said it on Monday, we said it last Friday, when you are talking about a war at the scale of World War II, whilst the Garand is useful for the US in the war, fundamentally, it does not overall change the outcome of the conflict. It makes a US rifle squad more effective in the style of fighting that infantry combat evolves into in World War I, which we covered in detail a couple of ramblings ago with Cyclic. But at the end of the day, as the Marines on Guadalcanal proved, the Springfield can still kick ass if you have proper... Well, just because it's a good rifle.
Also, no, they would not be using Springfields. They'll
Yeah.
be using Pedersens.
Yeah, and also Garand...
They will be using Pedersen's semi-auto rifles, and also good luck adapting a Garand into 303.
Yeah.
I would love to see a rim cartridge in an M-block clip firing in semi-auto without jamming.
Also, the funniest thing about this...
Okay,
The funniest... No, I am finishing my
no.
point. I will mute you and...
Let him get his point, and you and I could argue about this.
The funniest
I
thing...
want the talking stick after Fleet, or at
No.
least
That's
after
mine,
Foxo.
bitch. It's my way after me.
So, the Canadians aren't even going to have the money to adopt Garands, to be brutally honest with you.
They will.
Both are.
It's a
missing
rifle. They could have
thing.
to adopt it.
You are missing a thing. Help, Mama.
All right, go
Fucking
on, boys.
modern
Tay,
Ross
so...
rifle. As for making a semi-automatic rimmed cartridge clip-fed rifle in World War II, the Enfield did it.
Tried.
Thank you, Hood. That is an excellent way
Yeah,
to put it.
Oh fuck, that's hot nasty.
Yeah, as Hood has just put in chat, there is no single period infantry weapon that can completely upend how any nation's wartime performance played out. And that is exactly accurate.
Can I
Yes,
have
we know
the
that
stick
one.
No, because fuck. Oh
Maybe
You
my-
okay?
My shoulder hurts.
no, I just tried to take a drink of a cotton candy taste flavored energy drink.
Ah, the sneak.
Cool.
Yes. Oh god.
I think you did have a point you were going to try and say before you did that, but
You're right over
yeah,
there.
I think she now regrets her life.
I'm gonna throw up.
Can I-
And I've had Papa Domino's. Oh god.
Perhaps
then
take
I
a
have-
Let
lead,
Runa get
Right, while you recover.
Yeah. let Runa get her point in.
The problem is, one, Canada's not going to bankroll switching over the Canadian Army to the M1 Garand because Canada doesn't want to pay for ships, let alone anything else. So now you have to go and convince Whitehall, whatever the period correct version of Whitehall is over in the UK. And how exactly in 1936, which is when it enters into service as the standard US service rifle, are you going to get the British Empire to agree to throw out its Lee Enfields and replace them for Garands? They're not going to want to spend the money.
Yeah, they are.
When they have so much Enfield, like when everything is tooled for Enfields.
Yeah.
36 is early enough where it's actually acceptable to think that they could try.
A, the British are looking at making rifles like what Cedron posted. And B, remember, the British make an entirely new model of Enfield with a modified action for World War II.
What a Franken rifle. It hurts me.
Like something like a Mark IV Lee Enfield is a massive step up when it comes to rifles from a World War I era one. And they're looking at semi-automatic ones. So yay. It's almost as good as Matt Damon when it comes to being heartthrob.
You've already got a heartthrob, Foxo. He's in the chat. He's right here.
Yeah?
fleet, women can have more than one thing that they like.
True. This is true.
Get rid of your outdated patriarchal notions of monogamous women.
Well, they
No,
do
Foxo
still
is
exist.
very monogamous, but she does still like.
I'm sorry.
women.
I like foreheads that are big enough to be
However.
billboards.
Or what would be mono?
Oh, that would be funny. Give every rifleman a Bren.
Typical gunnery officer asks
Alright.
opinion on that one-off Orphy class destroyer with a 330mm recoilless rifle at the aft. What was the thought process behind the installation of the weapon? Can you squeeze a battleship-like firepower on a destroyer with the rifle? It was quite literally a test bed. It was not supposed to be a practical ship for warfighting. It was quite literally, what are we not using that we can fit this on to test it at sea, that if it all goes wrong and catastrophically explodes, is not going to meaningfully impact the combat power of the Red Navy through the loss of the ship. And
This was also
Question
something that
answered
was.
itself.
This was also something that was predominantly a fully. We have this thing lying around and we don't really know what else to do with it. Let's just test it as far as we can with everything we've got available. So they did. And they found that it was very mediocre, just across the board. It was okay as a direct action weapon because, you know, anything's going to suffer a severe emotional event when it gets hit by a 330mm recoilless rifle round.
I'm dead on the inside. I'd be fine.
But the majority of things they tested it against is mediocre effect. It also didn't have, you know, any appreciable range when aiming because, you know, the predominance that you want to get out of a recoilless rifle is lots of kinetic energy. And if it's big enough, it gets an explosive charge. That's why the Gustav is so good. But with a weapon like that you're testing on like that, you kind of want it to be direct impact, and you want it to be close enough that you can aim it properly. And over distance, that dispersion over range is so bad that you're not really going to get that kind of one-shot wonder reliably with every round. You're going to be wasting ammunition.
Generally, recoilless rifle has much lower muzzle velocities.
Yeah, so the penetrative power is itself already weaker. You don't get
It
more
also-
by just increasing the bore and increasing the size of the charge or weapon or ammunition. It actually goes down the larger you make it because it's so much bigger and heavier.
Yep.
It also just means that because of the lower muzzle velocity, you have less range inherently on the ballistic arc.
Yeah.
So it is just why.
As I
Other than the
recall-
sheer fact that you're mounting a really big diameter object onto a really small ship. That's about it.
As I recall, in the image pictured there, the target they were intending to use was like just beyond a kilometer away. It was like 1,200 meters. It fell short at 800 meters or so. This is the kind of range we're talking about with a 330mm recoilless rifle.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way you're getting battleship grade firepower, let alone range out of anything like that. You are better off, and I've seen it done, getting a one-shot wonder with either a standard round from a Carl Gustav, firing it, up to 1,800 meters with heat. That is a modern-day weapon with guiding or with ranging systems and modern technology. But the Carl Gustav has only gotten better over time, particularly with funky guided munitions that we're getting.
It's the fins stabilized stuff that gets really funky. In
Oh, yeah.
this era, it would just
It's
be
cool.
it is just basically a shell.
Yeah. You effectively giving yourself a fin guided missile or
Mhm.
rocket rather. Well, actually no, because it's got no thrust, barring its launch. You
You
effectively
can make it loft a bit with the fin.
either way, it's a smart munition because it can guide
Yeah.
itself to a target and doesn't have any additional thrust based on other than the initial ballistic explosion that sends it. The issue with also these destroyers this destroyer particularly was that it was fucking heavy. It was effectively, as I recall, they just repurposed a battleship cannon, and they had to trim it down quite a lot to get it to comfortably fit on the destroyer. It also was not frequently moved from that particular bearing. I think it had like 30 degrees of actual like traverse either way, and could be elevated reasonably high because it's at the stern of the ship. It's basically almost hanging over the stern. It's that close, because that's about the only place they could put it and not have it just completely fuck with the ship's center of gravity.
Let's go with this. You're more likely to have more effect out of a 330mm broadcast bombard than that.
Mayhaps.
Ow.
I wouldn't want to make a then modern bronze cast bombard to compete with this. I'd probably stick with this.
Of course not.
But at the same time, I wouldn't want to use that either. It's not a very good weapon. It never was.
Well, yeah.
It's much better
I'm not
than
saying
a
that.
portable system, or even a small vehicle portable system. The goofy little American vehicle I can't remember the name of, with 6 of them.
Oh, the Ontos?
Yeah, that one. Like, that's about as big as you can properly make a recoilless rifle and still have like cost effective and
It's around the 4 to 5 inch
tactical effectiveness. Anything larger is too big to like use meaningfully, unless you want to just tell a grid square to fuck off and have it be like some of those goofy towed artillery pieces. But even then, it's meh. And much smaller, you get man portable stuff, and it's much more effective because it's man portable. You can hide people with that. I can hide in bushes or in defilade, or I can hide in buildings and just peek out and shoot and deafen myself and everyone else in the building.
To be fair, when you're starting to get into those calibers, you're basically looking at large mortars in essence.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of effect.
Okay, so final question. Nice, easy one. Quick rattle off from every person in the panel. Yuchimankafoche, what Covenant ship would the panel own if able to? Personally, he would want a CAS. I'm not that familiar with Covenant ships, so I don't know. Give me one of the like corvettes from Reach, the ones that go around in atmosphere and like they used to blow up the big funny ship with the reactor failure. They look kind of goofy. I like them.
I'll take whichever one offers the best gender affirming care.
Not interested.
I mean, I like small craft, so like for me, it would probably be one of the smaller like additional type, which is something like the Mutane pattern cutters, the Shell Tor pattern cutters. I've actually been sort of finding out random bits of goofy knowledge for one of my Spartan Eagle Company unit leaders, who is helping Watershed Division, the Armor 3 mod, make ships to be spawned in. He's just published fucking Punic class with its 3 billion cubic meters of internal volume. It's 4 kilometers long. It's massive. It's law accurate in size. It's fucking insane.
Actually, does a Phantom or a Banshee count as a ship?
Does what, sorry?
Does a Phantom or a Banshee count as a ship?
I would say so.
So, yesn't. Does a broadsword count as a ship? No, it's a strike craft. It just because it is space capable does not mean that it is technically a ship. We don't really count a longbow as a ship or a pinnace as a ship, even in a very generous context. The reason that we look at like what does the Covenant count as a ship and why I go for some of the small craft, like say the Storm Cutters, which are more akin to how we would define a sloop or a sloop of war than anything else. But it's, how does the Covenant internally classify those? And Storm Cutter is designed to be, they're also classified as interdictors. So they'll chase down and prevent an enemy escaping into slip space or from escaping in general, so that they can be harassed into the guns of the larger fleet or larger capital ships.
I think you're all thinking too small, though. I personally would take the Spine of the Gods.
You mean High Charity?
Yeah.
No, the ship inside High Charity.
So, strictly speaking, the ship inside High Charity was the one at the top of High Charity. The Spine of the Gods is not technically a ship. It's just the thing that, like, the rest of High Charity was built around. It's the primary assembly forge, as I recall.
Yeah, but it's awesome.
Also, like, the Gravemind would have something to say.
Yeah.
I don't like it's the Spine of the Gods is a foreigner key ship. It's just in the Covenant control, so give me that.
Do you not mean the Anodyne Spirit?
I don't know.
The Spine of the Gods, also termed the Unbreakable Spine, was the nigh unbreakable sex skeleton of the former Covenant capital ship City Station. Fuck me. High Charity. The Spine of the Gods was primarily constructed from the remains of a derelict starship Forerunner origin design. What the fuck is this writing? Of Forerunner origin, discovered orbiting the world of that world. It was a fortress. All right, so the Spine of the Gods used to be a ship.
Yeah.
However, the Anodyne Spirit, which is the fun key ship, was the one that was at the top in the funny dome of High Charity, and I believe Master Chief yoinked and stole.
Right. Ladies and
Either
gentlemen.
are of those. Just don't give me the flood along with it. Or do give me the flood along with it.
As I said earlier this week, I'd win.
Yes, it would sacrifice humanity, but if it would
Also,
get
here's the
rid of
Anodyne
the
Spirit in High
French,
Charity.
but if it would get rid of the French, it might be worth it.
Right. Anyway, thank you, everybody, and all the panel for being here. We've had a very good evening. We've answered a lot of questions, and we've really worked through things. For those of you who are sticking around for the post-Ramblings game night, it is Dawn of War Definitive Edition. So, if any of you have Dawn of War Definitive Edition, please do feel free to stick around and join us. If not,
Are you playing Apocalypse?
Well, we can't play Apocalypse.
You can actually.
Is it updated?
No, but it doesn't need to.
Doesn't it?
No.
No, the only thing that they've
I've been
done-
looking into how you have to do it. It's a bit complicated, but it's doable.
The only
As soon
thing
as
they've
I'm
really done for
buying
Definitive
it.
Edition is like apply new textures and like
a
update
bit.
the engine a bit.
Very little bit. It's
It's mainly converting it to 64-bit, isn't it?
no.
And giving it a lot
God,
more
no.
Not even. Saying gives it more memories. Generous.
Anyway, let me just round off the stream quickly, and then we can keep this discussion going. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching.
So, Ronan,
please
can I
do-
say the cursed phrase?
No. Please do take care. Obviously, tune in
No.
on Sunday for the stream. I'm not sure what it'll be. Might be Dawn of War. Might not be. We'll see what happens.